Welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. Really appreciate you guys joining us yet again for some trade deadline chatter. There's a lot of news going around right now. We saw during our live last night, Luis Castillo get moved to the Seattle Mariners. Posted a video on that this morning. If you haven't seen that already, please go check out our YouTube page, subscribe, follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN. That way you don't miss out on a video when we do post one, and you'll be notified whenever we do go live as well anyway. But a lot of news today anyway, a lot of traction on Wilson Contreras of the Chicago Cubs and the San Diego Padres. Apparently the Padres are also making progress on a deal for Juan Soto. Now that doesn't mean that they're close to a deal, so don't get that mixed up or anything. But it seems like John Paul Morosi just tweeted out that C.J. Abrams, Robert Hassel III, and Adrian Morejon are in trade negotiations anyway, at least the names that have been brought up by the Padres, going the other way to the Nationals for Juan Soto. So kind of keep your eyes peeled as we get closer and closer to the deadline. This sounds like a deal that could come to fruition on Sunday. A big trade like this, I don't think they're going to wait to the last minute to try to get it done. I think if it gets past tomorrow, or I'll put it this way, if it gets past tomorrow and Monday, I don't think the deal's going to get done. I don't think it happens on deadline day. Too many moving parts, too many medicals that you're going to have to exchange. But thank you guys for joining us here on a Saturday evening. Because of that Luis Castillo deal to the Seattle Mariners, the Yankees missed out on their top target, rotation target anyway. They have now pivoted to Frankie Montos, as have the St. Louis Cardinals. Both those clubs were heavily involved in the Luis Castillo sweepstakes, and it seems like both teams are competing now for Frankie Montos. Now, Frankie Montos, of course, was about to be traded before the season even began by the Oakland A's during their basically rebuilding section of the offseason. They did a great job rebuilding that farm system rather quickly anyway with the Matt Olson deal. They got the MVP of the futures game this year in Shea Langeliers in that deal. The Oakland A's have a plethora of other players that they're expected to move. Ramon Loriano, Sean Murphy as well. Basically, if you're a veteran of any value, the A's are looking to move you. Elvis Andrus, even though you haven't had a good year at all, it seems like the Oakland A's might be willing to pay pretty much the entire boat of that salary should somebody desire you as a middle infielder depth piece. I'm not saying that he will, but I'm saying that's how far the Oakland A's are going to tear it down to the studs. They're willing to eat the entire the whole entire length of a contract just to get some pieces back in return. The Red Sox also made some moves today. We mentioned last night that they were looking at possibly dealing away Christian Vazquez and J.D. Martinez to the New York Mets. It seems like Nate Eovaldi has now entered those trade discussions as well. The Red Sox seem to be moving towards the mindset of selling at the deadline here. That weekend that they had versus Toronto apparently impacted them more than I thought, and they're going to go ahead and at least pare things down. It doesn't look like they're going to make any additions at all. The only two pieces they've said they're not trading is Rafael Devers and Xander Bogaerts. I wonder how firm they are on that Bogaerts stance, though, because he is in the final year of his deal. They haven't been able to hammer out a deal with him yet. It seems like they weren't even close in negotiations, so that's why they kind of broke off negotiations earlier in the season. So kind of keep your eyes on that Xander Bogaerts. If you're a team that needs a shortstop, looking at you, Philadelphia, maybe you go out and take a one-year rental or at least a couple-month flyer on a guy like Xander Bogaerts. That's kind of your headlines so far today. Looks like John Heyman is reporting that J.D. Martinez is expected to be moved. Welcome in, Cobra. I do expect them to get one of those two, if not both. At this point, the pretty much all the chips are lining up for the Padres to make some big moves. Their rotation is much better this year. I'm really excited about where this team is going to be headed. They seem to have locked up that rotation and what they want to do, especially after agreeing to the deal with Joe Musgrove, 5-year and $100 million. But the Padres should be movers and shakers at this deadline season. We saw one trade today between the Chicago Cubs and the LA Dodgers. A kind of multi-position outfielder, Zach McKinstry, goes to the Chicago Cubs in exchange for a bullpen piece in Chris Martin. Good job on the Dodgers for acquiring a bullpen option like Chris Martin. When he's on, he is one of the most lights-out eighth-inning guys you can have in the league. When he's not healthy, he's not. Peralta got traded too. Yeah. Other news on the injury front, looks like the Red Sox are not going to have Trevor Story. That may impact the Xander Bogaerts sweepstakes as well. As for the David Peralta deal that you were just mentioning, I, I do like David Peralta as a player. He's not having his best year. He's more of a platoon player at this point in his career, though. I think he's like 31, 32, something like that. But the catching prospect Christian Serta is headed to the Diamondbacks in return. The Tampa Bay Rays, not Devil Rays, uh, are very familiar with playing with platoons, so he kind of fits that mold. And I think he's an expiring deal as well, so not really big investment there going the other way. Good return, though. Last night we were told by Ken Rosenthal that the Rangers were heavily involved in the mix for Luis Castillo. It seems like he overstated their level of interest. I believe they were interested based on all the different outside reports we're seeing, but it sounds like they weren't really in it down to the final wire. So kind of keep your eyes and ears peeled anyway, just to kind of see all those different headlines as they come out. Even these national reporters can get things wrong from time to time. The Rockies extended their reliever Daniel Bard on a 2-year, $19 million extension today. He was one of the pieces I thought could have been moved at the deadline if they weren't able to agree to this extension. Good on the Rockies for investing in that bullpen. Looks like the Mets and Red Sox actually talked about a prospect in Mark Vientos going to Boston in return for J.D. Martinez. Red Sox beat reporters are now fully expecting Martinez to be traded. If Rangers didn't have enough for Castillo, they aren't getting Soto. I don't think it was a matter of them not having enough for Castillo. I just don't think they were willing to invest in a guy like Castillo, who's only a year and a half away from free agency. This year, they're not going to compete for a division title. They're not going to compete for a wild card spot. I mean, they might get close if they had Castillo, but I don't think having just one true crack at it would have been worth the prospects that would have taken to get Castillo. Everybody keeps underselling the Rangers farm system. You're sleeping on it. Another trade, anyway, between the Phillies and Cardinals today. Shortstop Edmundo Sosa goes to the Phillies in exchange for Jojo Romero, a reliever going to the Cardinals. Kind of odds and ends tinkering here and there. Mets actually are telling their reporters anyway that they don't believe Shohei Ohtani will be moved, so they're not really pursuing that type of a move at this moment. So for the Mets, you're looking more at the catching market, Contreras, Sean Murphy, players like that. You're also looking at J.D. Martinez, Christian Vazquez, a reliever in Daniel Robertson, and of course the DH Trey Mancini. They didn't give away any prospects to get either one of those players. They literally signed them in free agency. So they still have all the prospect depth that they had before they got those guys. So they didn't have to give up anything. They still have Josh Young, their top prospect. He had labrum surgery at the beginning of the season. That's why he was projected to be their third baseman to start the year. But of course, he had that torn labrum. Rangers are playing on FS1 right now. Welcome back, Mark. You think Soto's going to the Padres? So do I. I think they are probably the most apt team to be able to make that type of a move. The Mariners kind of took themselves out of any big trade after the Luis Castillo deal. The Dodgers, I think, are big game hunting, but if they go big game hunting, I don't think it's going to be for Ohtani or for Soto, or I think it's more going to be for Ohtani than it is for Soto. So I think Soto's real market comes down to the Mets and Padres, and the Mets are just going to see the the Padres are going to see the Soto opportunity as too big to pass up. And it sounds like the prospect haul that they're offering anyway right now is a lot less than what I thought Juan Soto might go for. Not saying that those prospects aren't very good. I'm just saying that I would have thought Juan Soto would command a lot more. Dodgers going to get Montos. I don't know about that. I think the Yankees, after missing out on Castillo, aren't going to let themselves miss out on Montos. If they don't get Montos, they're going to go after one of the other top rental starting pitchers on the market, probably a guy like Noah Syndergaard or Martine Perez, players like that. Montas's market, though, I believe is going to shape up between the Dodgers at some point. The Mets, I think, are going to check in just because they check in on every single trade candidate right now. The Cardinals and, of course, the Yankees. If you're a team in need of starting pitching, he's probably the best option out there at the moment after Luis Castillo, at least according to all reports. He's the next banana to go. I expect him to probably move either tonight or tomorrow morning. So we'll be on the air tomorrow morning, probably around 10:30 in the morning. We were originally going to do just 2 games tomorrow, but it seems like as much trade chatter as around Juan Soto right now, we're probably going to go straight through the entire day. We're going to start at about 10:30, and we'll go through Sunday Night Baseball, maybe a little bit after if there's still some trades coming in. So that'll be a long live, so don't forget to join us at least for a little bit of it. Padres getting anyone else besides Soto? If I had to say Contreras, probably Contreras. He seems to be the one catcher that's linked to them the most. Of course, they're the one team that seems to have questions about his ability to stay at catcher. Maybe they deploy him as a little bit more of a DH, but then again, he loses his value a little bit if he's deployed as a designated hitter than a catcher. That's why one of the catchers on the market right now, Sean Murphy, might be a little bit more attractive to teams who need a little bit better receiver than Contreras. He's been a net minus behind the plate for at least the last 3 or 4 years. But as far as the offense goes, still a plus hitter. Apparently, the Philadelphia Phillies have scouted Noah Syndergaard. That fits. They need some rotation help to kind of lengthen out that rotation. You don't want to overtax Zach Wheeler, even though he was got a late start to the season. You don't really want to push him too far. We saw the wheels kind of fall off the bus last year at the very end. The Giants, that's kind of the one surprising move. The Giants almost never sell, but it seems like the Giants are now ready to move off some of their veterans. The losing streak that they've been on since getting out of the All-Star break really has decided to change course for them. They were right around that wild card spot, the last wild card spot in the NL, and it seems like now they're at least going to sell off some of their veteran pieces. Most notably, Carlos Rodon. If he goes to the market, he's probably one of the top starting pitching options out there next to Frankie Montos and Martine Perez. It'll be interesting to see what kind of contract he commands. Of course, at that $20 million salary, the teams are going to have to weigh the costs of bringing him in versus somebody like Martine Perez, who's only on $4 million. Jock Peterson just went to the IL, I believe, but he is expected to be traded as well. Maybe a team like the Atlanta Braves checks in on him again after they had so much success with him last year. Ramon Loriano, I thought, might have been a candidate to go to the Giants because of that Peterson injury, because they do need some outfield help there, but it seems like they're going to sell, so Ramon Loriano is not going to be going to the San Francisco Giants. Peraza apparently is the chief focus of the Oakland A's in the Frankie Montos talks with the Yankees. They do have a very heavy Dominican presence on that team. Not saying that there's right or wrong in that. I'm just saying that's kind of how they built their team, and it seems to be working for them. No, nobody really likes talking about the World Baseball Classic until it's actually here, but those connections that those players have made growing up all those 3 years, playing for their national team, something like that can really hold or take root in a locker room. And so maybe the San Diego is looking to reap the benefits of a little bit of that. Last night's trade, the Luis Castillo trade to the Mariners, that sent the 1, 3, and 5 prospects to the Reds, in addition to a good bullpen arm as well. That should have some ripple effects on the price of these starting pitchers right now. That deal alone might have actually tipped the scales in the favor of the Giants actually being a seller to see what they can get for a guy like Carlos Rodon, as they know he's going to try to hit free agency and opt out of his deal after the year. Welcome in, Rafael. Appreciate it. Blue Jays need starting pitching. I believe they do. They have the reason why the Blue Jays got off to such a horrible start, in addition to their bats not quite living up to what they might have thought, is that their pitching just wasn't as good. Jose Barrios was tied for the Major League lead at the All-Star break with a number of home runs given up in the American League. That's atrocious. He's a great strikeout pitcher, but they haven't done much. Hosmer's been good for them at the beginning of the year, but he's really starting to fall off as over the last, month or so now. So maybe a team that would take on Hosmer might be nice, but then you got to fill his spot. Pablo Lopez would be a very good option for a number of teams that need starting pitching. Controllable starter and all that. Seems like the Soto race is down to at least four likely options. We mentioned that last night. It was down to the Padres, Dodgers, Mets, and Cardinals. Yankees basically dipped their hat out of that ring. I think that was the right move for them. New York Mets have sent a scout to the Red Sox game pretty much ever since he became available. We'll see if something materializes there. That type of deal, I think, is probably the most likely one to be made right now. If you're a betting man or woman, go to Vegas, put money down on the Mets acquiring a guy like J.D. Martinez. In fact, I'd probably put down money on the fact that it would be J.D. Martinez just because of that salary. The Mets might be the only team willing to take on that deal. That way they don't have to give away much prospects in return, and they could use those prospects that they save in that deal to flip it or to acquire other talent as well. Maybe a catcher, a back-end reliever, a back-of-the-rotation starter, something like that would really help out the Mets. Sounds like the Padres are actually putting the full court press on right now for Juan Soto. So we might even get some news on Juan Soto tonight. Trying to read who this is actually coming from. Just says MLB Network. John Paul Morosi. Okay. So, yeah, it sounds like the Juan Soto Derby is really heating up tonight. Expect those negotiations may come to a head probably tonight or tomorrow. So if you're a fan of Juan Soto, a 23-year-old prolific outfielder, now's the time to pay attention. Send an email to your team. Let them know to get in on it. Seems like he's actually going to be moved. Yeah, it sounds like Gore isn't in that trade discussion yet. Seems like the Padres are holding him out of those negotiations at the moment. But I think if push comes to shove, we will see Gore in that deal. For instance, if it comes down to Soto going to the Dodgers or going to the Padres are probably going to be more than happy to include Mackenzie Gore in that. And just think of what the Washington Nationals would have done in 2 years, reshaping that core, going from aging core and Max Scherzer, Strasburg, Bryce Harper a few years ago, Trey Turner, and now going so much younger, accumulating so much talent. The deal that they made last year with Trey Turner and Max Scherzer, that's going to solve a lot of issues for that team for the next 10 years. Trey Turner, I think, was a very valuable piece for them that they got from San Diego originally, but that deal that they made really did solve their problems. Yeah, they did almost have Harper and Machado, but if I'm the Padres, I'm very glad with where I am right now. You chose to go and opt for pitching as opposed to getting Harper first. Pitching has really kind of solidified itself. Everybody needs relief help right now, Mark. Everybody. There's not a lot of good relief options out there. There's one of the best relievers. I am a Rangers fan, so kind of take that with a grain of salt. The best left-handed reliever on the market this year is Matt Moore. It's not close. He hasn't given up a home run in 46 2/3 innings this year, which is fantastic for Matt Moore. If you know anything about his career, that's kind of one of the issues he's had, not being able to prevent that long ball. He's been thrown in a lot of different situations, long relief, short relief, coming on to face one batter, coming on to get a save in the ninth. He did that 2 nights ago against the Angels and then came back and faced the 9-1-2 in the order last night in the 8th inning and got Ohtani. And so he's going to be one of the best relievers on the market. Rangers should get a pretty penny for him. I don't think the Rangers are going to buy, to try to win this year. So I think he's probably going to be gone as he's only on a 1-year deal. So keep your eyes peeled for that in the relief market. Closers on the market, there's not a lot of good closers out there this year. David Robertson of the Cubs might be one of the only good closing options besides maybe the Angels' Raisel Iglesias. I haven't seen anything on Iglesias' numbers this year, so don't hold me to anything on his numbers. But in years past, he's been highly sought after. I wonder if a team checks in on him if the Angels are indeed willing to sell. Snell is also going to be moved by Tuesday. No, I don't think he's going to be moved either. I mean, there's not enough value in him. I mean, the trade they made to get him cost a whole lot more. They're not going to just sell low on him. As much as, he may not be the greatest pitcher right now for the Padres. And the issues that he had at the end of his tenure with the Tampa Bay Rays kind of showed themselves. He wasn't able to pitch deep into games. Other teams on the outside were kind of hesitant to deal for Blake Snell because of those issues. They wondered if he could pitch deep into a game, and he hasn't been able to do that with San Diego. San Diego hasn't been able to protect him from that either. I'm very curious to see what the Cardinals are going to end up doing, though. The Cardinals have been mentioned a lot this trade deadline season. They haven't done anything of note aside from that Edmundo Sosa trade, anyway, to get Jojo Romero, anyway, the reliever. Those are the type of moves I expect the Cardinals to make year in and year out, just kind of moving pieces around the edges. I don't really expect them to have major investments in guys like Luis Castillo, Frankie Montos, Juan Soto. That's not the Cardinals we've all grown to know. But maybe this is the year they're willing to say, the heck with it. We've seen the Dodgers basically run the NL for years. We want a piece of that. I think they'll do something, but what I'm saying is it's a very different way of thinking for the Cardinals front office. They've always been about drafting and developing talent. The only reason they get in on some of those high-end pieces like Nolan Arenado is because they're taking advantage of another team's mistake. The Colorado Rockies gave Nolan Arenado too much money, soured the relationship with him, weren't able to invest in the team around him. They got the Rockies to eat like 60 to 70 million of that contract, and they didn't have to give up the best prospects in the world to get him. Goldschmidt, the deal itself was he was on an expiring deal, and they were immediately able to re-sign him to a 2-year extension after they made that deal with Goldschmidt from the Diamondbacks. That was the very last time the Diamondbacks have been relevant. So kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at the Cardinals, when you see them involved in these negotiations. Any trade that they make like this has, for a Juan Soto or a Frankie Montas, would be a step out of the ordinary for them. They never pay premium prices for players like this. Think of players that they could take advantage of in a bad situation, kind of like the Mets are with JD Martinez, where they're an organization able to eat the money of that JD Martinez deal. Something like that would make a lot more sense for the Cardinals, but in a different way. They don't want to eat money in St. Louis. They don't have that kind of payroll to do so. But some type of situation where they can take advantage of another team is what the Cardinals are known for. Switching it up and going all in on a player like Juan Soto is not what they do. That's kind of cool. Will Clark is getting his number retired by the San Francisco Giants. How many of you guys remember Will Clark? I remember him from his days at the Rangers. Good on him for getting his number retired. Joel Sherman just posting that about an hour or so ago, that the Giants are open to pretty much everybody right now on their roster, except for Logan Webb, which makes sense. He's their one starting pitcher. They really got some really got a surprise jump out of him last year. He notes that they didn't sell in the walk year of Mad Bum or Will Smith in 2019 when they were teetering on the playoff race. Seems like they are now regretting that decision and learning from their past mistake. That adding to the slide after the All-Star break kind of leaned them in the decision to go ahead and sell here at the deadline. Got to wonder about every single substitution in games right now. Somebody just had a cramp in a game today, and everybody's like, did he get traded? Did he get traded? No, he was just pulled for cramps. So every time you see somebody pulled out of a game or pinch hit for or pulled from a start or taken out of an inning early, you're going to see a lot of those type headlines for right now. Martine Perez pitched very well for the Rangers last night, and possibly his final start with the team. Went 7 innings, giving up 1 earned run against the Angels. Now, of course, it's the Angels, but he's really bounced back after a couple of bad starts before the All-Star break. His career is really on the up and up. Really seems to have come around as a person as well. Great story for him. Ken Rosenthal is reporting that the Padres and Cardinals are the clear frontrunners for Juan Soto. I'm still wondering what the package is that the Cardinals are willing to give up for him, though. What exactly are they willing to go? How far are they willing to go into that prospect pool to get it done? They don't have the best prospect pool, and part of the reason why they've been so successful is they get the most out of players that other teams don't necessarily have the wherewithal to get that talent out of them. So buyer beware when you dip into that Cardinals prospect pool. John Heyman reports that the Rockies are not going to trade Freeland, Sensatella, or Marquez, so their starters are going to remain in place. Not a lot of action on CJ Cron. There's not a lot of interest in first baseman on the market right now. I think it's likely he gets either traded tonight, tomorrow, or Monday. If it gets past Monday, he ain't getting moved. But if I had to pick a night that it gets done, I think either very late tonight or tomorrow, probably midday, if I had to guess. That's kind of why I decided to go ahead and do a full length stream tomorrow, 10 to probably 10 tomorrow. That'd be a very long stream, but we'll try to do it. Just kind of checking in on some of the other option or other trade news out there. Mets are still scouting Mancini pretty much every game right now. Yeah, it will be. But trade deadline season in any sport that we follow here at the Upside is kind of what I like to do. Trade deadline, off season, MLB winter meetings, stuff like that. Hopefully, this year's winter meetings will be a whole lot more eventful than last year. Anything will be because the winter meetings didn't happen last year. Heyman reporting that the Houston Astros are looking at first base and catcher, probably a backup option apparently at catcher. They want a little bit more of an offensive option back there. They've been linked to Wilson Contreras. I don't think they're playing at that kind of level anyway. Josh Bell, of course, has been bandied about there as well. Yuli Gurriel really hasn't had very much success this year at all. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you. Blue Jays apparently are interested in Tigers reliever Michael Fulmer. He actually threw a scoreless eighth inning last night against Toronto. Very interesting for them. Michael Fulmer, of course, the former starter for the Tigers, has now transitioned to a very successful bullpen role. Shouldn't command too high of a price, though. Remember when the Tigers held on to him probably 2 or 3 trade deadlines ago when he was coming up in the big leagues and really had found some success in consecutive years. And the Tigers said, no, we're building for the future. He's going to be an ace of our staff for the next 10 years. That didn't work out. I think that's why the Tigers now are deciding to at least make everybody on their roster available, except for maybe Riley Green. But you'd imagine if somebody really offered them the moon, the stars, and everything else along with it, that they might move him. Every player is available for the right price anyway. More articles saying that the Yankees are building their offer for Frankie Montos around Oswald Peraza. Seems like Volpe is the one prospect they're not willing to move. For those of you who are Yankee fans, if you guys have been following anything about their prospects over the past 2 years, you remember they signed a guy named Jason Dominguez, once thought of as the best prospect in the Yankee system until Volpe kind of came along and Peraza. This year, he's down to number 7 on the prospect ranks, and he's continuing to drop anyway because his body's just filling out a little bit more than they thought he would have. So kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at these trades, that some of these prospects may not be having the greatest of years, so teams are not going to view them the same way. Players that are lower on the totem pole but having great years might have a little bit more value. That's what we kind of saw with the Yankees trade for Andrew Benintendi. They chose to go with 3 pitchers who are performing very well this year, who are in the mid-teens. The Rangers did that last year with the Yankees when they traded for Joey Gallo. That really worked out for the Rangers in their favor. I think 3 of the 4 prospects immediately went into the Rangers' top 10 prospects. Glenn Otto, of course, is now in the majors. He's starting tonight against the Angels. Nothing so far through 2 innings. Another prospect they have is Ezekiel Duran and Josh Smith. Both are up on the big club for the Rangers. Duran more of a power hitter. Smith more of a utility infielder, at least at this year, or at least at this juncture of his career. If he can hit for a little bit more consistency, maybe you see him really get a lot more playing time and lock down maybe a second base rollout, and maybe another team maybe as a trade piece. I know you guys mentioned that the Rangers didn't have enough for Luis Castillo. I don't think they're really talking names per se, but they definitely have the prospect wherewithal to do it now. They haven't traded away pieces in several years now. They've built it up, and now they've heavily invested in that pitching staff, where they have a lot of a lot of their best starters right now are at the AAA level. So if they decide to invest in a starting pitcher this deadline season, they want a controllable starter. Maybe they can consolidate some of that talent at that prospect level and see if they can lock up one of the starting pitchers on the market. Wow. Now you get the obligatory tweet from John Paul Morosi. One longtime MLB team exec predicted to me tonight that this deadline is going to be one of the wildest we've seen in decades. Can't wait. They say that every single year. Come on. I mean, Soto is kind of a very rare trade candidate, don't get me wrong. Ohtani, if he gets moved, is a once in a, I don't know, not even a generation, once in every 100 years trade candidate. But I don't think we're going to end up seeing an Ohtani deal at this point. Seems like a lot of teams are cooling their jets after the Angels just don't seem interested in making the move. At least they're not serious in their talks with them. The demands that they're making having a little bit more of an effect on that than anything else. Not that the Angels don't realize where they're at with Ohtani, that they need to make a move at some point, but it seems like their asks are very unrealistic at this point, at least until Juan Soto is moved. Now, once Juan Soto is moved, say tonight or tomorrow, you could expect things to really heat up for him. Rangers just take a 1-0 lead, or excuse me, a 2-0 lead. Check in on some other scores from around the league at the moment. Aaron Judge hit, surprise, surprise, yet another home run today. Right now, the Astros are on top of the Mariners 4-3. Nationals on top of the Cardinals 7-5. Twins on top of the Padres 2-1. Phils and Pirates yet again going to extra innings, tied at 1. White Sox and A's right now tied at 2. I know if you're watching, Zach, hopefully your teams will pull it out for you. I know you're a White Sox fan. Braves on top of the Diamondbacks right now 6-0. Dodgers 3-2 right now in Colorado on top of the Rockies. Cubs and Giants no score. Rangers just took a 2-0 lead. Game's already completed today anyway. The Rays took out the Guardians 6-4. Yanks on top of the Royals 8-2. Blue Jays 5, Tigers 3. Boston loses to Milwaukee 4-9. Mets shut out the Marlins 4-0, and the Reds beat the Orioles 8-2. Another piece that could move at the deadline is the Rangers' Cole Calhoun. He's up right now. Could be kind of that utility outfielder for a team, contact hitter. He's really been had a very difficult year with strike calls against him, the worst in the majors anyway, by pitches outside of the strike zone being called for strikes. So maybe there's some positive regression in that bat. And he still hasn't been horrible. He's hitting like 240 right now, 230, somewhere in there. So maybe down the stretch anyway, you could probably expect a 250, 255 bat. Not saying he's going to be the difference between a World Series and missing the playoffs, but he's a good bench piece. If you guys are joining us, say hello in the chat. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and like. Follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN. Let us know which team is your favorite team, what trade you'd like to see happen, what you think Soto is going to end up going for, all of those type of things. Curious what you guys think. Cleveland Guardians, haven't touched on them yet, but they have a couple of starting pitchers right now on the market. Blue Jays needing starting pitching, so there's a lot of connections there. No rumblings yet of any specific pieces going one way or the other, but Guardians are said to have Shane Bieber out there. Zach Plesac is also generating interest. They have a lot of young talent on that Guardians team, as always, so maybe they cash in some of those older chips to the Blue Jays and see what they can get out of them. They do always have a starting pitcher to trade. It always seems like Cleveland has 6 good starters for whatever reason. Even after they trade one, they bring in another guy that would be another team's number 3 starter right off the bat. A lot of Yankee fans right now clamoring for Carlos Rodon after the Giants basically send up the white flag, saying they're going to try to trade off some pieces at this deadline season. One piece that I haven't mentioned yet that is for sure going to be changing teams is Joey Gallo. I don't expect him to be traded at the deadline at all. His value right now is negative. I don't care what MLB trade or baseball trade values.com says. 0.8 value right now for Joey Gallo. Sorry, that contract of $10 million and a 161 batting average ain't getting anybody interested. The Yankees are said to want a prospect back for him. I think they're going to have to end up designating him for assignment and have to live with him going to another team in August. Rangers and Padres are the only 2 teams who have expressed any interest in him at all. Other teams were said to be interested or were going to contemplate having interested in him. The Minnesota Twins and the Chicago White Sox, both of those teams have not shown any interest as of yet. Jose Quintana, the Pirates starter, is the most likely starting pitcher to be traded. A lot of teams could use him. His price could get a little bit higher because of how cheap his contract is and how he's kind of regressed back to his normal self this year. Any team, I think, that's not in playoff contention would be worth a flyer on getting Joey Gallo. I think you're probably going to have to sign him to a 1-year extension after the deal if you're a team that has at-bats for him in your lineup, just to see if you can take all the pressure off of him. That way you can hit free agency the following year. That's kind of what he wanted to do. He has not had a very good walk year at all. Things just did not work out in New York for whatever reason. Has like a 40+% strikeout rate right now. It's just not gone well. I mean, instantly when Gallo arrived, the fan base was already picking at him for how he had dressed, literally when he got off the flight. I mean, for literally from day one. And then on the field, you knew what you were getting at the time. It was a high strikeout, high power guy, and you knew you were going to have a lot of swing and miss in his game. Everybody basically panned the trade, as far as like pundits anyway, looking at you, Bowden anyway, from MLB Radio. There's, what's that other guy's name? There's a few other ones out there anyway that really gave the Yankees a hard time because they have a lot of swing and miss in their lineup. They looked at Judge, Stanton, and Gallo, how much swing and miss they have. Well, the pieces that are carrying that team right now are Judge and Stanton. Just imagine how good a lineup they would have had if Joey Gallo was able to find that level of success. However, that didn't happen. And so we are where we are right now. Whit Merrifield apparently is on the block for the Royals. We mentioned him yesterday. I don't expect him to get moved. The Royals had their chance to really maximize his value a couple of years ago when the Cubs were in the playoffs and they were the most hot team after him. His multi-position flexibility, his ability to get on base, his high average. This year, though, he's only hitting like 240. He's not nearly the on-base guy. He has that Iron Man streak going at 500 consecutive games started, which in today's game is pretty long, but it's nowhere near Cal Ripken Jr., and he is aging. You don't really see any positive signs for him going forward, so I don't expect any team to really shell out for Whit Merrifield, so I think the Royals would be much happier just to hold on to him and see how the end of his career goes. Padres could use him in left, yeah, but I don't think that the Royals are going to like anything that the Padres are going to have to offer for him. I mean, the Padres, what are you going to be willing to give up for a guy who's hitting 240, who plays every day, sure, but is not going to do anything to jump that lineup off? Glenn Otto missed up and inside to Gosselin of the Angels. That ball hit him square in the head right here. Looked like it hit him in the lip of the batter's helmet anyway. So I don't think he actually took it straight on the head, but they're going to pull him out of the game anyway. Scary moment there if you're an Angels fan. He looked like he was fine, just kind of knelt down as he was kind of shaken up more than anything else. I'm sure he's going to be in concussion protocol. Mathis is going to come out of the dugout just to talk to Glenn Otto after being shaken up as well from having thrown the ball. You never want to see somebody get injured. Padres outfield is worse in MLB. Very likely they have not had very good performances out of there. Profar is very good out there. Mazara has been better. But if you're looking at Trent Grisham, he's been terrible. Will Myers isn't there right now because of injury, I believe. They got Ruiz playing out there in center. A good speedster, but that's about all he offers. You don't really have anybody to protect Machado or Tatis when he comes back in that lineup. So getting a guy like Juan Soto to play left, something to think about. Use Profar as that super utility guy like you were planning to all along. Let Mazara continue to play in right. Maybe you get a platoon option out there in right for him. Let Mazara play against righties and somebody else play against lefties. Mets have been the most active team at this deadline. They already made the trade for Vogelbach, made another move for a catcher as well, and they're said to have their hands in pretty much every single pie out there. Nice bunt hit by Vazquez of the Angels. 2 on, no out. Another name to kind of keep your eye on at this trade deadline season is going to be Madison Bumgarner. He's kind of back to at least a league average pitcher so far this year. Don't get me wrong, that's not saying he's been fantastic, but at least league average is a whole lot better than where he has been the last 2 years. But the Diamondbacks would have to eat almost all of that contract for a team to take him on to get anything of any value out of him at all. But maybe the Diamondbacks in the position they're at are just willing to take that chance at this point. Jock Peterson, as I mentioned, is expected to be on the trade block now that the Giants have moved into a sell phase of their season right now. Wow. Shohei Ohtani just did a 3-run home run. Wow. That was pretty. If you're wanting an ace-type pitcher, a number 4 cleanup hitter, Shohei Ohtani is your guy. It just hit a 424-foot home run. Beautiful swing on that ball, too. If the Soto deal gets done soon, you could see Ohtani move, as the Angels are going to have a lot of inquiries in him, and maybe they're going to have to lower their price a little bit from the best 4 prospects in your system, plus established major leaguers as well. That's a hefty price to pay, even for Juan Soto, and his price should be higher, in my opinion, than Ohtani, just because Ohtani is the older of the two, and based on where their contract is at. Soto is expected to get $500 million plus in free agency once he hits there. Circling back to the Reds, after trading away Luis Castillo, Tyler Mahle is their top piece to trade right now, along with Brandon Drury. If you're needing a middle infield option, somebody who can play all over the diamond, Brandon Drury is probably your guy. This year he's only at a $950,000 salary, and he's performing very well. A bench piece, somebody you can deploy all over the diamond. Pretty much everybody could use a player like that. If you have an injury, say at your third base spot or your second base spot, Brandon Drury could fill in nicely for you. But Mahle is their top option right now. The Minnesota Twins are said to be after him. They need some starting pitching. They really need an ace more than anything else. Mahle isn't that, but he's still a very good, controllable starting pitcher. So we'll see if the Twins are able to get the starter that they want. They are leading the AL Central, would like to shore up their playoff hopes. Maybe a team like the Philadelphia Phillies makes sense for Brandon Drury. Go cheap instead of going all out for Xander Bogaerts. Let him play short and let Didi Gregorius just be DFA'd. He's been terrible. The A's, of course, their all-star this year, Paul Blackburn, could be moved at the deadline as they look to pretty much reset their entire organization. He's another starting pitching option out there. Yankees have been in touch with the Marlins as far as Pablo Lopez as well. Peraza, again, being the main piece there. Peraza seems to be the one piece that the Yankees are willing to talk about this trade deadline season. Before the season, they weren't willing to talk about either one, but it seems like Volpe has really stepped up his performance ahead of Peraza at the moment. You guys tell me, which piece besides Juan Soto or Shohei Ohtani would you like to see moved at the deadline, and where to? I think the Mariners would like to shore up their playoff hopes a little bit more. I think they'd like to add at least one more starter and maybe a bullpen piece, but they traded a lot of that prospect capital. Just looking at what they have left, they have a good catching prospect, so teams in need of catching could go there. They've had a couple of good outfielders in their system. Let's see if they're any good right now or having good years real quick. Nope. So maybe you're looking more at middling options. Harry Ford, their catching prospect. That's actually pretty good hitting numbers for a catcher in A-ball for Harry Ford. So maybe if they're looking at that starting pitching market, maybe they could go for a guy like, I don't know, maybe a Zach Plesac if they were willing to package together a number of prospects to get it done. Appreciate the like. Thank you. Let's look at the Yankees farm system. They've been involved in a lot of trade talks for starting pitchers. Anthony Volpe is their number one prospect. I don't think he's going to be moved at this deadline. I don't think there's a piece out there that interests the Yankees except for maybe Shohei Ohtani that would even allow them to trade away a guy like Volpe. Peraza, he's at AAA right now. He's hitting 257. Doesn't really excite you there. I don't know. You can kind of see why Peraza is the piece that the Yankees are willing to talk about. Volpe, on the other hand, in AA, hitting 253, but with better power numbers, as he's looking to figure out AA pitching, striking out a fair amount. That's your top two. As I mentioned, Dominguez is starting to tumble down the prospect boards, only hitting 261 so far this year. At high A, he's hitting 219. The Mets, anyway, they've made a couple of trades around the periphery. If they do decide to get in on something big, they were interested in Juan Soto in the beginning. I don't think they're going to end up pulling off something like that. The guy that the Red Sox were talking about for JD Martinez is their number 5 prospect, Mark Vientos, third base outfield, first base prospect. The Red Sox management apparently view him as more of a DH candidate of the future, hitting 263 this year at AAA, slugging .519 with 19 home runs. That's pretty good production there. Nobody with really eye-popping numbers outside of that. Nope. Let's see who else has been in the headlines. The Dodgers are always in on pretty much every option, at least just checking in. Their top prospect, Cartaya, they could trade away. They have a lot of catching depth. Their catching is solid at the majors as well. They drafted a catcher in the first round this year. 17 home runs for Cartaya. He isn't only an A-ball with 17 home runs. That's pretty good. 20 years old, so he could be a piece that's on the move. If the Dodgers do decide to play at the Shohei Ohtani level, he could be a piece that goes back the other way. Dodgers have a lot of redundancy at that catcher position. The Phillies are always in a buy type of mindset anyway. They don't really have a lot of success with their prospect pool right now. Just waiting to see if anything's going to break here in a moment. Last night we had a lot of success with the Luis Castillo trade happening in the middle of our live. No such luck yet anyway as far as trades. But you guys tell me, what trades would you like to see happen? We mentioned that Thor was available from the LA Angels. He's on that 1-year, $20 million deal. He was pulled out of the out of his start, or not pulled out of his start, but he was scheduled to start originally, but was scratched before the game the other day, and was told basically you're not starting until after the All-Star break. Code for basically we're trying to move you before the deadline. So if you're looking for a back-end starter with some potential to kind of play up in the postseason, Noah Syndergaard might be your buy low candidate, as he's not pitching as well as, say, some of these other options out there on the market, but maybe you catch lightning in a bottle. The Yankees have checked in on him. That would make a lot of sense. I think they would make more sense than most out there, actually, just because of his success that he had in New York. Checking in on some of those scores again. Houston still on top 4-3. Nationals 7-5 right now over the Cardinals. Twins have jumped up that lead a little bit. It's now 4-1 against San Diego. Diamondbacks are on the board. It's now 6-2 against the Braves. Colorado has come out in front on the Dodgers. It's now 5-3 in the top of the seventh. No score in the Giants and Cubs game. That home run by Ohtani gave the Angels a 3-2 lead against the Rangers. The White Sox were indeed able to pull out the victory against the Athletics. Phillies beat the Pirates in 10. And the rest of the scores, of course, are already final for the day. Blue Jays with their starting pitching issues, looking at some of their prospects. They've been mentioned to trade out a number of these different pieces out there. Arelvis Martinez was mentioned before the season in a trade for Jose Ramirez that never materialized. Groshans as well. So they do have some pieces that could be on the move. However, Martinez is only hitting .213, really dropped off a cliff this year at AA. Groshans at AAA, hitting .251. Not really moving the needle either. Middling returns for them. A-ball pitcher Tiedemann anyway, in 8 starts pitching to 2.39 ERA. He might be the piece that goes out in a deal for the Blue Jays if they're to acquire a starter at this deadline season. Otto Lopez, kind of their multi-utility player in the minors this year. Been up on the majors for a minute. This year's hitting .267 at AAA. He could be a nice piece. Gabriel Moreno, their top prospect, is a catcher. At AAA, he's hitting .310. Interesting. Not a lot of slug, but a good average. They do have Alejandro Kirk there, although Kirk plays a lot at designated hitter. Danny Jansen getting the majority of the time behind the plate. Klopfenstein, the starting pitcher for the Blue Jays in their minor leagues, was mentioned in the offseason as a trade candidate to acquire Jose Ramirez as well. Has also not had a good year. He's had a couple of bad years now. So their prospects, it seems like, have all moved back. So they're probably going to have to go out on a limb a little bit more, include a little bit more talent than they normally would in a trade, because it looks like most of their prospects have all backed up. Not what you want when you're trying to buy at the deadline. What's that, Cobra? There's one player holding up the trade for Soto. Who is it? James Wood. Very likely. I mean, the Nationals have been interested in him for a while. Let me look at their prospect pool. There's one other guy on there. I want to say it was Merrill as well, that the Nationals have been inquiring about pretty much since the Soto talks really began. The shortstop, both of those players, James Wood and Jackson Merrill, are in A-ball. Jackson Wood hitting .407 this year. He's been fantastic. At A-ball, he's hitting .393 with a .518 OPS. Of course, that's one home run. He's only played 13 games at A-ball. Looking at Wood, he is an outfield prospect, so maybe acquiring Soto would make that bite hurt a lot less. At A-ball, he's hitting 319, a 568 OPS. He's having a lot of success there. He's probably going to get moved up to high A if they keep him after the deadline. Hassel, let's see how his numbers are looking this year. High A, he's hitting 303. Be interesting to see which one they'd rather have, Hassel or Wood. Based on their numbers that they have right now, I'd probably think, or probably believe that they're going to go with Hassel. He had his struggles at the end of last year anyway in high A. This year he's kind of rebounded back to being one of the best pure hitters in the Padres system. I think Wood is from DC. I'll check for you. IMG Academy. Doesn't say much. I'll take your word for it, though. I think they're probably going to have to include at least one of Wood and Merrill. I think the trade for Soto is probably going to be a lot bigger than it's been reported by any of the reporters so far. If the Ohtani price is four of your best prospects, not four of your best, the four best prospects in your system was the asking price by the Angels. You got to think the Soto asking price was a little bit higher. Now, keep in mind that everybody basically thinks that the Angels are out of their mind for having that high of a price on a guy plus established major leaguers. But maybe Soto gets something like 6 of your top 30, something like that, and 3 or 4 of your top 10. Something like that could be what ends up getting the deal done. Padres don't have a lot of pitching in the minors anyway to really go back on. Gore is probably the best of the bunch right now, but he's, of course, at the major league level. Weathers as well, but he had an injury, I think, to start the year. I'm not sure if he's still injured or not. Welcome back, David. What do you think of the Phillies pickup of Sosa from the Cardinals? Doesn't move the needle much for me, honestly. There we go. Sorry about that yet again. Anyway, what do I think about Phillies picking up Sosa? They need anybody at shortstop. Gregorius has been terrible. Sosa should be a net plus for them. They lose bullpen help with JoJo Romero going the other way. They are going to need more bullpen help going forward anyway. Not that Romero moved the needle either for them, but maybe this frees up a spot back there to acquire somebody. I think this is more of a stopgap anyway, at least to give Gregorius competition until they find a better solution. We were talking about the Juan Soto to do you see them making a trade for any type of power bat? No, I don't think they'll make a move for a power type bat. I think they'll make a move more for a. If I had to pick one, they need help at a lot of different areas. Not that they need that. Not that they're bad in any of those areas. It's that they just could use a little bit better production. Think that Bryce Harper with injury, Derek Hall came up and immediately hit all those home runs. Has really had that same impact ever since those home runs, and he's living off of that resume right now in that lineup. How much longer does he stay at that DH spot remains to be seen. But I think you're going to see them make some type of move for a bat. I'm not sure it's going to be a power bat, though. Maybe you see them go after Nelson Cruz if they do go after a power bat, but Nelson Cruz isn't exactly moving the needle. He's not having his greatest year. He is not very old. He is aging anyway, a little bit past aging. I think he's in his 40s at this point, and he does have another year left after this deal, or after this year anyway. So maybe something like that happens. Cobra, we were talking a minute ago about the Padres prospects. One piece that was mentioned earlier this year to be in the mix for any one of their trade candidates out there was Joshua Mears, possibly being as the ballast in a in an Eric Hosmer type deal. But his stock has really fallen off. He's hitting 192 at high A. Marcus Semien just hit a home run. Ranger fans will be excited about that one. That one was a 3-run shot. 5-3 now. Rangers on top of the Angels. Cool. Sorry, Angels. Y'all have been terrible all year. It's time for you guys to realize where you're at and get to grip with reality. Angels fans have been coddled long enough. But the Phillies, just looking at how much they struggle with, they're in almost every single game. They need that Castellanos contract to start to look a little bit better. Salvador Perez, or maybe a return of Carlos Santana. Are you talking about Carlos Santana that was just traded to the Mariners from the Royals before the All-Star break? Yeah, I don't think he's going to be moved. I think he's found a home at least for the rest of the season in Seattle. And I think they don't really want to eat that contract anyway, especially when I think they're going to try to go after one of the shortstops this offseason. They don't really want to add too much long-term money. But as far as the Salvador Perez anyway, I don't see them going after him either, mainly because I don't see the Royals ever trading Perez. I really don't. I think he's going to be their stalwart there. He's going to be the, hey, look back to our glory days guy. Whit Merrifield is kind of in that same camp, although Merrifield wasn't really there for some of that anyway. I think they missed the boat on their opportunity to trade Merrifield. I want to look at their box score from today. Castellanos 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. Ouch! Down to 250 on the season. Real Muto 2 for 2 with a couple of walks. That's fantastic. Bohm was in the 3 spot, went 0 for 4. Schwarber and Hoskins 1 for 4 and 1 for 5 respectively. Gregorius got a hit. Yay! He's still hitting 219. Boo. Stott has been a nice surprise this year, in my opinion. He's had some decent moments here and there, but he's hitting 194, so he's not a long-term answer there, at least at the moment. I'm guessing you're a Phillies fan, David? I'm curious what you see the Phillies actually doing at the deadline. What do you see as their biggest hole? Aside from shortstop, in my opinion. I think they could just use somebody who makes contact in front of some of their big boppers in that lineup. I wonder how good Schwarber is at the leadoff spot long term. He's only hitting 204, but his on-base percentage is a little bit higher because the walks he got a walk today. But maybe more of a contact hitter. They have nobody who's hitting for 300 in that lineup. Of course, it looks a lot different without having Bryce Harper in that lineup. Once you get him back, that'll be a big boost for them. But I think a guy like Nelson Cruz might be a nice piece for the Phillies. Buy low guy, proven track record. If you get him to get hot, especially in the postseason where he's shown the brightest anyway, isn't afraid of the bright lights. He's the type of guy I think Dombrowski would go, hey, you're my guy. Michael is a veteran from a team that really has no shot. That hits for average and can get 20 to 30 homers. Yeah, like that's pretty much what they need. Somebody who can hit for that 280 to 300 average, 20 to 30 home runs. But I think the prices for those guys are going to be a little high. I'm just curious. I want to see what Nelson Cruz's stats are at the moment, because I think he is going to be a nice piece for a team that is going to go for fairly cheaply here at the deadline. Hitting 231. There he is. Okay. Hitting 231 this year. He does have 8 home runs. It's the August 2nd deadline. The 2nd. Tuesday. I'm off on Tuesday, so I'll be doing a long live stream as well. Tomorrow I'm going to do one from basically about 10 to 10. So if you guys want to join us then, see if we can announce some of those trades right along with you guys, get y'all's reaction as we go. He is having a down year. He's struggled recently over the past 30 games. He's hitting 183. Yikes. So maybe not Nelson Cruz. Seems like the wheels are finally coming off the bus for him, unfortunately. Dang. He was one of my favorite players for a very long time, but seems like Father Time is finally catching up to him. Maybe he's a buy low candidate for a team. Who knows? Can't be fun playing baseball at 41 for a team that's not competitive. I think it's been slow because of the Juan Soto news. If we didn't have the Juan Soto news, we probably would have seen at least 2 other starting pitchers go. The catchers would have started to come off the market, and we would finally start to talk about the bats. The only bat that's really moved is the Daniel Vogelbach going from the Pirates to the Mets, and Andrew Benintendi from the Royals to the Yankees. And before the All-Star break, Santana going to the Mariners. Other than that, no bats have really moved. We're going to see a flurry of moves with bats being traded before the deadline. Especially, I think the reason as well that we're getting so much activity, or we're expecting so much activity late, is because of the extra playoff team. More teams think they have more time to consider their options. Just look at the Giants. Before the All-Star break, they probably would have been a buyer at the deadline as they tried to stay in the playoff chase. After losing a bunch of games since the All-Star break, they've now, due to past experiences at the deadline, have seen the error of their ways in the past and have decided to flip gears and go ahead and trade off some veteran pieces. Do you think Soto goes to an AL or NL West team? I think right now, if a deal gets done at the deadline, he's going to the Padres. I don't think the Cardinals are going to get him. I don't believe in that at all. American League team, I mean, the Rangers were mentioned as one of the sneaky teams in his market. That would make a lot of sense for them. The Rangers beat reporters actually just put out an article just how bad that left field spot has been for them. So maybe they're hearing some internal rumblings from the Rangers camp they can't talk about. You hear a lot about how much they hear behind the scenes that they're not at liberty to say yet. And so you wonder if there's some activity behind the scenes for a left fielder for them. Other teams in the American League that could have interest, the Yankees were mentioned as a team, but they're clearly not in a place where they can trade for Soto. They still have to worry about their shortstop spot long term. Most importantly, they're going to have to pay Aaron Judge. I don't see him going there. There's nobody else in the AL East that really goes, hey, maybe Juan Soto's the answer. The AL Central anyway, there's nobody in that division at all interested in Juan Soto that would have the wherewithal to make the trade. Now, the Cleveland Guardians have enough pieces to possibly get something like that done, but there ain't no way they would be able to pay him what he needs in free agency. So I think it's probably going to be Padres or maybe a dark horse NL team anyway. So kind of keep your mind open to those possibilities. I forgot what I was just going to look at. Let's see if we can update our tracker here. Last minute trade that would shock everyone. I'll get the Ohtani one out of the way. A week, well, not even a week ago, at the beginning of the week, I would have told you that Ohtani probably gets moved based on how much chatter was coming out on it. However, the Mets apparently and a few other teams have reached out to reporters basically saying that astronomical high price for Ohtani isn't getting anywhere as far as talks at all. There's no real names being exchanged because of just how steep of a price just preliminary talks are having with the Angels. If Soto gets moved, maybe he's the surprise of the deadline. Outside of that, a pure shocker. I'm not sure how shocking this would be, but maybe the Guardians trading away one of their starting pitchers, Plesac or Bieber. Bieber probably being the more shocking of the two, but I'm not sure how shocking that would be. Let me see something real quick. There was one name I wanted to check here at the deadline. One surprise that I found interesting is that the surprise headline that I found anyway out of Houston was that they're actually talking about some of their starting pitchers in trade. I don't think there's any way anything like that happens, but something where they trade off one of their starters to fill another hole would be absolutely flooring to me. I don't see that ever even happening, but that would be a shocker. But something that could have real possibility would be Xander Bogaerts. Just because of how little possibility there is for him to be traded, maybe a team like our Phillies goes out on a limb and says Xander Bogaerts is our guy who hits for that 20 to 30 home run level. It's our average hitter as well, really solidifies that lineup. And with Bryce Harper coming back, maybe you make a run at it and keep him after the season anyway and sign him to a contract extension. He's already played in the Northeast for a number of years. He's already had to deal with the Boston media, Philadelphia media, very similar. Might make some sense. That might have a little bit more legs than any of these other like completely out of nowhere shocker trades. Just looking at the standings just to see if anything else pops out at me. You also got to think about where teams are on the other side of the bracket. When you think about teams that are trying to get for, the number one, the number two, the number three, the number four pick in the draft, you look at teams like Kansas City, Detroit, Washington, Cincinnati, that level of team. Oakland, the Angels, the race to the bottom, how bad they can make their team take wins away from their team. Boston seems to be falling back in the AL East, so they're looking to trade out of some pieces, out of some contracts, try to rework their roster. Bogaerts, if they decide to go that route, would make a lot of sense, especially after they made the signing of Story. This contract, of course, hasn't worked out so far for them, but maybe getting him over to short would be a lot better for him. Allow his talent to play up and try to learn a new position. But I think that would probably be the shocker. As aggressive as the Twins were to try to get Carlos Correa, the pitching moves they made over the past couple of years, I would like to see the Minnesota Twins do something here at the deadline. I don't think they'll be the top bidder for Montos or some of these other options. Maile wouldn't be a big surprise, but say they get really frisky and they're like, hey, we want to win right now. We're winning the AL Central. The White Sox are going to dominate the division like a steamroller the next couple of years if they stay healthy. The Guardians are always going to be good. This is our chance with Byron Buxton over the next couple of years with Carlos Correa to try to make something happen this year and convince Carlos Correa to stay. Maybe they go out and get an ace-level pitcher if they can, really push all their chips to the center. I don't think they'll be able to get one, but that would be a truly shocking move. Yeah, he's still a very good hitter, but it's that contract that I worry about if I'm a Phillies fan. That would really put a damper on your ability to get a shortstop this offseason and be able to keep some of your other pieces and rebuild that bullpen even better, fill out those 4 or 5 spots in the rotation. But I think getting a guy like Bogart solves the problem that you have with your lineup without costing yourself the ability to make that roster a little better next year. Will it hurt to make a trade like that? Yes, but it's going to cost a lot less for him than, say, somebody who's under contract for multiple years. If Trey Turner was still on the Nationals, Trey Turner would be perfect for the Philadelphia Phillies. But he's a free agent at the end of this year, and I think there's a decent chance he actually leaves the Dodgers. Phillies might be a nice landing spot for him next year. Phillies are going to get one of the top shortstops next year. It's going to happen. You just got to be careful not to find the Javi Baez out of them. Yeah. The Yankees, I'm still not sold that they're going to make Volpe their starting shortstop next year. I still think if they get the right piece in there, say like Shohei Ohtani, the Angels come up to him and say, hey, you give us Volpe, Peraza, Dominguez, and, a piece off of your major league roster. Something like that could get an Ohtani deal done, and then they go ahead and try to get a shortstop. Thanks, David. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you. Join us tomorrow. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you haven't hit the follow us or haven't followed us on Twitter yet, at UpsideSN for when we go live, we'll post it on there. That way you guys know when we will start up. Appreciate you for joining us, and thanks for chatting. If you guys are watching with us tonight, feel free to join the chat. Touki Toussaint on the mound for the Angels. Looking good. Maybe he's a name that's moved. In case you guys are missing it or have missed it anyway, the Padres are making a hard press right now for Juan Soto. Seems like the names they've already offered up to the Nationals are C.J. Abrams, Robert Hassel, and Adrian Morejon. Hassel right now ranks as their #1 prospect according to MLB.com. Of course, they have some aged out prospects, Mackenzie Gore, Ryan Weathers, pieces like that. They're above them. C.J. Abrams opened the year as their top prospect. He, of course, is a shortstop. They already have Machado and Tatis to play that position at the major league level if they need to. They have Kim as well and Profar, all of whom are comfortable playing shortstop. They kind of have the luxury in C.J. Abrams. He could be the long-term answer for the Nationals there. The Nationals had a lot of success with that trade a few years back anyway, with Trey Turner going to the Nationals. In fact, I want to look at what that trade was. He was listed as the player to be named later because of the way the draft or the trade rules worked anyway. This was the Will Myers trade. That sent Will Myers from the Rays to the Padres. At the time, that was considered a great move for them. The Padres thought Will Myers was their answer to everything. Outfield, first base type, really would have gotten their depth going anyway. But they traded away right-handed pitching prospect Joe Ross, who has had some time in the majors. Brother Tyson Ross as well. But in that deal was Trey Turner. That was back in June of 2015 is when that deal was made. He was the 18th overall pick in the 2024 MLB draft. Sorry about that, guys. But anyway, getting a piece like C.J. Abrams for the Nationals could start their next window of opportunity for them. They already have Josiah Gray from the Dodgers, Kiba Ruiz taking over as catcher there. Maybe this will open up their next window of contention within the next year or two, really flipping around this rebuild really quickly for them. Just looking at their prospect pool right now for the Nationals, how quickly they've rebuilt it. Now, bear in mind, they've already played a few of these rookies at the major league level, but Cade Cavalli right now is their top prospect. Brady House, Cole Henry, Jackson Rutledge. I want to say he came over in a trade. Let me see. Nope, he was a first-round pick. Christian Vaquero, another first-round pick. They've got a lot deeper prospect pool than they did a few years ago. Lucius Fox. I remember him. Prospect at one time with the San Francisco Giants. He's in their camp now. So thank you guys for joining us here tonight. Really appreciate it. Had a good chat here earlier with David talking about the Philadelphia Phillies. Let us know who your favorite team is, who you'd like to see traded. Last night we saw Luis Castillo get traded while we were on our live. If you want to check that out. We also posted a video this morning about the trade itself that sent Luis Castillo, possibly the best pitcher to be moved at the deadline outside of maybe Shohei Ohtani, in exchange for Noelvi Marte, Edwin Arroyo, Levi Strout, and Andrew Moore, a bullpen option anyway, in the minors. Good trade overall for the Reds, getting three of the top 5 prospects according to MLB.com. Strout, of course, not having a great year, kind of moving back. So we'll see how he does going forward. The top pitching arm on the market right now is Frankie Montos. Just to kind of check in on his numbers anyway. He's a 29-year-old right-hander, 3.18 earned run average, 104 and 2/3 innings pitched so far this year with 109 strikeouts. He is, as I mentioned, 29. His last 7 starts anyway, he has a 3.44 earned run average. He is a very good pitcher. You got to wonder about the bright lights, though. He's never really had to have that issue at all. He started, of course, his career with the Chicago White Sox. Welcome in, Goat. Soto to San Diego. Yeah, the more and more you hear about it, it sounds like it's going to happen. You a Padres fan? So if Soto gets traded to San Diego, what do you think of your lineup? Are you set with it, or are you going to still try to make another move for Contreras, for Wilson Contreras? Or are you going to try to hold on to what's left of your prospect pool after making the move? What do you think? I think your starting pitching is fine. You could use a bullpen arm, as everybody could. Would you like him to see, or would you like him to get Contreras behind the plate? Do you worry about him handling your pitching staff, though? Apparently, the Padres were the team that questioned whether or not he could receive those pitchers and keep that high or the high results that they have this year if they had him behind the plate. He's been a negative behind the plate for the Cubs. Or do you make the move to get Murphy from the A's? If I were going after somebody here at the deadline, if I'm going for a catcher, Christian Vazquez might be the top option. But of course, that might be part of the ballast going the other way in the Mets deal to keep that to make that contract for JD Martinez more palatable for the Mets to eat. Not that I think they need to have it more palatable. I think they'd take any salary on right now. Do you worry about the Dodgers getting in on the Soto sweepstakes, or do you think they're out of it? Or maybe even the Ohtani sweepstakes? You got to think if they get Ohtani, they're still going to be the favorites in the division, even if you get Juan Soto. I think if you guys get Juan Soto, that really steps up the pressure on the Dodgers to actually go out and do something. You think the Dodgers are going to get JD Martinez? That's a name I haven't heard going to the Dodgers, or going to the Dodgers anyway. I've heard him being mentioned with the Phillies. I've heard him being mentioned with the Mets. I've even heard him being mentioned with the Cubs for some reason. I didn't see the point in the article. I read the article, and even after their reasoning, it still didn't make any sense to me. Veteran leadership was basically their key argument. Well, in that case, any winning player on a roster can go to any team and be the veteran influence on that team. Doesn't mean they're willing to pay $20 million for that veteran influence. Here's a decent trade offer I just saw for the Padres, possibly going with Soto and maybe a couple bullpen arms going back to the Padres as well with Finnegan and Edwards to kind of round out the trade. Abrams, Gore, Hassel, Merrill going the other way makes some sense, but I think that still need more going the other way to the Nationals. Though I don't think if the Nationals or if the Padres can avoid it, I think they'd like to keep Mackenzie Gore out of that trade. I think they'd be willing to include two other top prospects just to keep Mackenzie Gore out of that deal. I haven't mentioned Ian Happ yet. He is the other member of the Chicago Cubs that is expected to be moved besides Wilson Contreras and David Robertson. I mentioned the Astros were interested in first base help with Josh Bell because of Yuli Gurriel's continued struggles at the plate. Maybe moving him into more of a reserve role might work a little bit better for them. They've been very patient with him as of yet, as the Twins beat the Padres 7-4. That one just going final. Musgrove 2 earned over 6. Sonny Gray 1 earned over 5. some Giants fan posted on the baseball trade value site that they're willing to give up Logan Webb and a number of other top prospects for Juan Soto. Are you nuts? I understand Juan Soto is great, but Logan Webb is kind of your future there if you're a Giants fan. I mentioned that the Blue Jays were scouting Michael Fulmer. That would make a lot of sense for them. Maybe they could trade away a couple of their lower level minor leaguers. I mentioned a couple of them have had a lot of regression in their seasons this year. Maybe that would make some sense for them. I actually like this trade. The Dodgers getting Tyler Mahle and Brandon Drury, another idea from a fan, basically saying that Drury would be a nice platoon player. Max Muncy hasn't been very good. A lot of poor performance in that Dodgers lineup. Getting some more depth in that starting rotation as well would be a good move for the Dodgers. Dodgers have gone to the Reds before with trades, so they're very familiar with working with one another. I like it. Josh Bell making some news, apparently speaking with reporters after the game today, that he does in fact expect to be traded. He was already traded once by the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now the Nationals find themselves in a very similar position to the Pirates did a couple of years ago. Appreciate you guys joining us. If this is your first time joining us, feel free to say hi. Let us know who your team is, what you'd like to see your team go after at this trade deadline season. Wow. Looks like the Rangers bringing in Kumar Rocker for Jack Leiter to work with might have been the miracle pill for him. Jack Leiter today, 5 2/3 of 2-hit ball. Gave up 3 walks, struck out 4. His best start in 2 months. That's a welcome sight for Rangers fans. They were beginning to worry about if Jack Leiter was really going to live up to that hype. You got to imagine with his pedigree, he was going to figure it out at some point. This is one start, but it's a step in the right direction. Rangers just hit another 2-run home run. It's now 7-4. But as I was mentioning, Josh Bell is expected to be traded. Says he enjoys playing with Juan Soto, but they both kind of know they're both on the way out the door. Welcome in, Charles. Appreciate you. watching a little bit of baseball. We would go through the kind of the trade deadline news anyway. Padres apparently are making a hard push for Juan Soto tonight. I don't expect a deal to be hammered out tonight at this point. We're already to 10 o'clock. But if I'm a betting man, I'd probably put it on tomorrow. 10 o'clock Central anyway. Soto, if Ohtani for Ohtani to get moved, I think you'd have to see the Soto deal get resolved first. At the beginning of the week, I kind of mentioned that I thought Ohtani was going to get moved before Soto, just because of where the market was and how active it seemed like the Angels were to at least talk about him with media members, that they had already set a price. Well, now that price is a little bit higher than they had originally stated. It sounds like they want not of your top prospects, but the top 4 prospects in your system, in addition to major league talent. So that's why I think the Ohtani deal has slowed up a little bit. They haven't even started talking about names really with teams. The Mets were the team that kind of lit that out to reporters. Then other teams kind of back that up essentially with their own beat writers that's exactly what they're hearing as well. But the Soto deal has actually gotten down to exchanging names. The Padres apparently have exchanged names with the Nationals, saying C.J. Abrams, Robert Hassel, and Adrian Morejon were the 3 prospects that have been listed by name as going to the Padres in those negotiations. Now, you'd have to imagine that the Nationals are going to want a lot more than that, and I think they will get a lot more than that. But it's sounding like Juan Soto deal is going to get done. Getting on Dan Patrick's show this morning saying 80% chance he gets moved. So that's why I think everything's going to kind of go with Juan Soto. Once he gets moved, you're going to see a flurry of moves after that for bats and that kind of thing. The starting pitching market's really getting going. The catching market, there's a few catchers out there right now. Christian Vazquez, Wilson Contreras, Sean Murphy, and there's a few teams that need help back there. Padres, Mets, Rays all need catching help. So it'd be interesting to see which one goes where. Starting pitching, after the price we saw for Luis Castillo, I think the market needed time to kind of settle itself after seeing how much went back to the Reds. That was a big price for the Mariners to pay. They don't have too much left at their top end of that prospect pool to go out and make other moves. However, you have Jerry DiPoto at the GM. They're willing to make moves and try to get things done. They have some outfield prospects that are aging out of their system. Maybe they move some of those to be able to get a back-end starter or some bullpen help before the end of the deadline. But the rest of the starting pitching market has now flipped to Frankie Montos, with the Cardinals and Yankees at the top of the market for him. That's kind of where the starting pitching market has gone. After him, Rodon has actually entered the market now, with the San Francisco Giants saying they're going to be sellers, along with Jock Peterson. Maybe you see Jock Peterson go back to the Braves, where he had so much success winning a title there. But it seems like after the All-Star break, the Giants kind of started losing a lot of games, and they've switched tracks. They've decided to go ahead and sell at this deadline. If you're a Giants fan, you might remember a few years ago, Mad Bum, Will Smith were not traded at the deadline. They decided to hang on and try to hold out for contention, and they ended up losing both Will Smith and Madison Bumgarner in the offseason for nothing. Madison Bumgarner's contract, of course, was 5 years, $82 million, something like that, to go to the Arizona Diamondbacks. That was a horrible contract. This year is actually the first decent year of that deal for the Diamondbacks, but they're going to have to eat almost the entirety of the rest of that deal. But the point is, the Giants decided to hold on to those pieces when they could have gotten something out of it. They chose to hang on to Madison Bumgarner and weren't able to reap the rewards of trading them away. They have seen the error of their ways, apparently. They've let it be known, essentially, to their beat reporters that they will be transitioning to a sell position. Their top 2 pieces that they're going to trade, Carlos Rodon and Jock Peterson. They have a number of other veterans that they're expected to at least get calls on as well, but those are the first 2 that are going to be on the block for them. Jock Peterson should move fairly easily, even with his injury right now. Teams that are in need of outfield bats would love to have that power in the postseason. We saw how he performed last year with the Braves. But Carlos Rodon will definitely fetch them a pretty penny. The reason why they're going to trade Carlos Rodon is because he has an opt-out in his deal. He signed a 2-year, $44 million deal with an opt-out after the first year. Think of the Carlos Correa contract where there was 3 years, $105 million with an opt-out after the first and second year. Carlos Rodon kind of bet on himself this year as well after everybody kind of saw his arm wear down last year towards the end of the season with the White Sox. He goes to the Giants to kind of show teams out there that he can hold up, that it wasn't a fluke year or that kind of thing. And he's more than proved that point this year. He should get top dollar this free agency go around. I try to be on top of it. I mean, I work 9 to 5, well, a lot longer than that today. That our shift went a little long than what I was hoping today. That's why I didn't get it started as early as I wanted to. I wanted to be on by 6:15, something like that. I didn't get on till 8 something, I think. I was not happy about that. Glasses. Make them and sell them anyway. Run a store, et cetera, et cetera. Trying to find out who they're talking about right now in the Rangers chat. A prospect that I haven't heard of before. I don't know. Walmer. Trying to search for him on Google and I get nothing. Let's see. He's not even in the top 30 of the Rangers. I don't know. Sounds like the Rangers are actually going to call up their former number 1 pick in Bubba Thompson. He was once a 2-sport athlete, football player and baseball player at one point, except actually decided to stay with baseball. Never really lived up to that prospect status, but they're finally going to give him a look, at least in left field. If you have been paying any attention to the Rangers this year, the Rangers left field has been a complete abyss. They have gotten literally zero production out of it. They will make a move there this offseason. Center field, they've had a nice surprise in Leody Taveras finally living up to his prospect status. You remember in the 2020 COVID season how awful he was at the plate. He wasn't able to make contact, wasn't able to get walks, would strike out on 3 pitches, 3 out of 4 at-bats in every game he played. Well, he's back up to the majors now, and he's actually hitting like 320 right now for the Rangers. He's really improved. So it sounds like they might have found their defensive first center fielder. He's not going to hit 320, I think, in the majors, but if he hits anything like 275 with a 325 on base, the Rangers would take that. But left field is where it's at. That's why you hear them you hear them mentioned in pretty much any left field or left fielder talk out there. The best one on the market right now, of course, is Juan Soto. Joel Sherman of the New York Post mentioning them as probably the number 4 team out of his top 5 to have interest in Juan Soto. I don't think they'll end up paying the price to get Juan Soto, but they're going to be willing to pay that type of dollar. I don't think they're willing to pay that dollar and prospect to get that type of player. But they're going to get somebody for that left field spot in the offseason. Sounds like the Rangers are doing a little bit of everything. They're going to trade Matt Moore at the deadline. They're looking at possibly trading Martine Perez and signing him to an extension, seeing how it kind of works out. Sorry about that, guys. Somebody's having a little bit too much fun with our chat anyway. But thank you for joining us, Charles. Which game are you watching tonight? Shohei Ohtani up right now against Jose Leclerc. This will be a good test for Leclerc in his rebound from Tommy John. Upstairs. Swing and a miss. Remember how I just mentioned Bubba Thompson might be the next name to watch? Apparently, he just hit a home run for Round Rock, the Rangers AAA team. He's a good defensive outfielder. Sounds like he could be the next guy up. Still waiting to see if we see any moves tonight. Got to wonder if teams are waiting till the morning to see how the dust settles after all the performances tonight. See who's small group of Padre fans started chanting, "We want Soto at the game." That's kind of cool. Those kinds of things are noticed not just by the front office, but by ownership. When your own fans are starting to chant for a player that's not even on your roster, ownership takes note of those things. Do kind of a rundown of the trade candidates list. Number one on pretty much everybody's board is Juan Soto. We already talked about him at length. For me, number two would be Shohei Ohtani. If the Soto deal gets done a little bit sooner, that way conversation can shift to Ohtani. Wilson Contreras is probably the best bat outside of Josh Bell on the market, but because of his position at catcher, he's a little bit more valuable. Starting pitchers, Frankie Montos is at the top of the heap there. Tyler Mahle is expected to be moved by the Reds. We haven't really touched on Ian Happ too much, but he's having probably his best season this year, a .282 hitter this year. Has good power, switch hitter, good plate discipline. He's controllable for at least another season. Padres are said to be interested in a stack of Happ and Contreras. Got to think if they do that, that probably means they're not getting Soto at the deadline. So you got to think they're going to wait until the Soto news kind of settles first before they move on to their backup target into Ian Happ. JD Martinez, the Red Sox beat reporters, as we mentioned, say he's going to be they very much expect him to be moved. They put the trade chances up at about 80% now, according to a couple of the beat reporters that I follow. He has a $19 million salary this year. He's age 35. We already talked a little bit about Brennan Drury, kind of a utility infielder anyway, hitting .268 this year with 19 home runs. All you Cubs fans out there who keep trying to throw Patrick Wisdom in my face, sorry, give me Brennan Drury. I'm just not a Patrick Wisdom fan. Sorry. David Robertson, probably the best closer that's going to be moved at the deadline anyway. I don't think he's going to be used as a closer wherever he ends up getting traded to. He has a cheap enough salary at about $5 million this year, a 1.83 ERA and 39 1/3 innings for the Cubs. He's due for a raise next season. He has a lot of late game experience. Has spent a lot of time on the East Coast. Maybe one of those East Coast teams takes a leap on him. We've already mentioned the Mets, probably the most likely at the moment for him. Noah Syndergaard. We mentioned the New York Yankees as needing a back end starter to kind of give them some length. Now that they've missed out on Luis Castillo, if they miss out on Frankie Montos, maybe they move to Thor. But is that more of for name recognition or for performance? This year, he's throwing a 3.83 ERA through 80 innings, has a $21 million salary. So that'd be a little bit onerous on the Yankees, but of course they have the Joey Gallo deal to try to move the other way. Maybe they could move him to the Angels. Angels need pretty much anybody better than what they've been playing in left field. Their top prospect, Joe Adell, from a couple years ago, just played absolutely terrible defense out there. Gallo is a right fielder by trade, but can play left. Played a little bit of center as well. Maybe in an environment where he gets everyday at-bats will allow him to kind of rectify what's gone wrong with him. Jose Quintana, we touched on him a little bit as well, of the Pittsburgh Pirates. He will be moved at the deadline, one of the cheapest rental starters out there. Drew Smiley of the Cubs could be moved at the deadline as well, another very low-cost option. They're going to be a 5-6 starter for teams. This Drew Smiley would be an option, I think, for the Atlanta Braves. They don't have a lot of prospects to deal, and they just tried to rebuild that farm system a little bit by trading away Drew Waters to get the number 35 selection in this year's draft. They drafted a good pitcher out of that, so I don't think they're going to turn around and reinvest the prospects they just acquired by getting into the sweepstakes for a guy like Frankie Montos or something like that. But Drew Smiley could be a 5th, 6th starter option for them. We already mentioned Michael Fulmer being interested, or the Toronto Blue Jays being interested in him. Talked a little bit about Matt Moore, the Texas Rangers, the best left-handed reliever on the market by a mile. Hasn't given up a homer in 46 2/3 innings this year. Welcome back, Wyatt. Thanks for joining us. Who do I think won the Mariners trade? Depends on what you mean by win. If you're talking about win for making the postseason this year, I think the Mariners win the trade. If you're talking about who is going to have the better future between the two teams, the Reds. I really like the 2 prospects they got to headline the deal. And Noelvi Marte, he's probably going to be the 3rd baseman of the future. Think Eugenio Suarez, the trade that they made earlier this year with Jesse Winker and Eugenio Suarez going to the Mariners. The Reds did a lot better this time around, getting the number 1, 3, and 5 prospects. The best prospect in the deal, though, to me, is Edwin Arroyo. I really like his prospect status, where he's projected to end up in his big league career. I really like where he's headed. Sounds like he's going to be a middle-of-the-order shortstop. That's very hard to come by, and to get that in a trade, great job, Cincinnati Reds. Now for the Mariners, the long-term is all about signing Castillo to an extension. If they're able to do it, that could offset the loss of a guy like Arroyo. But it's all about how this trade works out. I do expect them to make the postseason. Does this make them World Series favorites? No. Does it make them favorites to win the division? No. But it does get them into the postseason for the first time in like 21 years. That in and of itself is a win for the Mariners organization. Chris Martin is also a trade candidate. We already saw him actually be moved to the LA Dodgers for Zach McKinstry. Talked a little bit about Whit Merrifield. I don't buy that at all. I don't think he's moving. Carlos Rodon of the Giants, touched on him quite a bit. He might be an option, a fallback option for the Yanks if they're unable to get Carlos Rodon, or if they're unable to get Frankie Montos. Carlos Rodon might be a good option for them. I told you at the beginning of the year I did not believe the Giants were for real with their 107-win year last year, and it seems I was right. Hate to tell you I told you so, but I told you so. Jock Peterson, I told you, is very likely to be moved now. In fact, I'd consider it 1,000% lock that Jock Peterson will be moved at the deadline. A couple of days ago, I would have thought that the Giants would have been buyers at the deadline, but it seems like the Giants are going to go ahead and push their chips to the center and say, all right, we're done. Wilmer Flores is mentioned as a utility infield option for teams out there. We've talked a little bit about Trey Mancini. As much as the Mets have scouted him, I think it's inevitable that they end up working out a deal. I think they're just kind of buying their time with the Oriole faithful for how much Mancini has meant to that team. We saw the David Peralta trade earlier today of the Arizona Diamondbacks, moving him to the Tampa Bay Rays. He is strictly a platoon player at this point. His splits are atrocious. There's a lot of outfield bats out there. Tony Pham of the Reds. Of course, you have to worry about fantasy football beefs if you're on a team with Tony Pham. We talked a little bit about the Oakland A's, anyway, are going to move off of a number of veterans. Sean Murphy. Sean Murphy, the catcher from the A's, anyway. I think he's probably the best well-rounded catcher on the market outside of Christian Vazquez, but I think Vazquez is going to end up on the Mets as the sweetener in the JD Martinez deal. Thank you for the like. Appreciate it. We talked a little bit about Ramon Loriano. The A's have done a really nice job rebuilding their prospect depth. They have a lot of good young players now. Loriano is going to be moved. He's a good center fielder, has a little bit of pop, which is surprising for a center fielder, but of course he had that PED issue. Not really sure where his market's going to go, but everybody could use a center fielder. Fourth outfielder type. Ramon Loriano would be a fantastic fourth outfielder. Maybe a little bit too rich for some teams in that regard. We were talking with David earlier today, and earlier in the chat anyway, if you want to look back up at that. Talked a little bit about Nelson Cruz, how he could be an option for a team that's needing the bat, DH type, a buy low type of player. He's having an atrocious last 30 games, though, hitting below 200. Got to wonder if the wheels have finally started to fall off the bus for him. Then there's a bunch of bullpen options. The Nationals are going to try to get anything they can out of their bullpen options. Kyle Finnegan, Carl Edwards Jr., Joe Mantiply of the Arizona Diamondbacks could be moved. He was the all-star representative for the Diamondbacks. Maybe he could be an 8th, 7th inning guy. We mentioned a little bit about Christian Vazquez of the Red Sox, but again, I expect him to be the sweetener to the Mets. Dom Smith and maybe Vientos going the other way makes some sense. Joey Gallo is out there. I don't expect him to be moved at the deadline. I expect that no team is going to be willing to part with a prospect for him, so he's going to be DFA'd. And then another team is probably going to pick him up on the cheap and just give him at-bats in the outfield, just throw him in left or right, and just say, hey, fix your swing, and we'll give you a 1-year pillow contract for next year, and that way you can rebuild your value for next season. That would be a good outcome for Joey Gallo's season, as it just everything that could go wrong with the Yankees and Joey Gallo has gone wrong for that pair. Marlins are said to be shopping pretty much everybody on their team outside of Sandy Alcantara. One of the names that a lot of teams are asking about is Pablo Lopez, the starting pitcher. Namely, the Yankees are asking about him. The Twins are said to be interested as well. The Twins are going to need a starter at this deadline. Tyler Mahle is their other option that they're interested in going after. Tarek Skubal is on the market from the Tigers. I don't think they'll make a trade in the division with the Twins, but maybe a team that's out there and says, hey, we really like his 3.88 ERA. We think he's really turning a quarter, and there's not often you get a chance to scoop up a pitcher at his age 23 year. I don't really see that level of success continuing for Skubal, but to me, it sounds like a team needs to wait another year just to see if this is for real. We talked a little bit about the Guardians starting pitchers, Shane Bieber and Zach Plesac. Martine Perez would be higher on my trade bait board if the Rangers weren't interested in signing him to a contract extension in August. I believe they will get something worked out. Think of all the starters they've kind of worked around the last few years. The reclamation projects and Mike Minor, Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, John Gray, and now Martine Perez. Great value they've gotten out of those starting pitchers. They haven't had much else at all in that starting rotation. My team, my Rangers. Daniel Bard is officially off the trade board anyway after signing that 2-year, $19 million extension. Fresh news out of the Juan Soto sweepstakes. Yesterday's price that the Nationals asked for Juan Soto is not today's price. Sounds like the Nationals were offered 4 top prospects from the Padres in addition to whatever else was in the deal. But now they want an additional top prospect from the Padres. Sounds like this deal might actually get done if they're willing to include that 5th prospect. We already talked about C.J. Abrams, Andre Morejon, and Robert Hassel. Got to imagine there's another prospect they're wanting out of that deal. There's been a lot of talk around Merrill and Wood. If they include one or both of those pieces, you got to think a deal gets really close to being done with Juan Soto. That's a lot of talent to rebuild that Washington Nationals organization. Look back to the Washington Nationals and the trade they made to get Trey Turner. The Padres at that time thought Will Myers was the answer to their prayers at first base in the outfield. Oops, that didn't work out so well. Trey Turner, of course, was traded to the Dodgers last year. Hopefully this trade won't bite the Padres quite as badly. I mentioned that the Marlins were willing to trade off a number of pieces. Garrett Cooper, the first baseman there. Not a lot of value there, in my opinion, just because it's a first baseman. I mean, he's on an affordable $2.5 million salary, hitting .279, but he doesn't really move the needle if you're at the first base position anyway. He's not exactly hitting .330 with 40 home runs. If the Padres are indeed able to make the move for Juan Soto, they are said to at least think about moving Blake Snell. Maybe they move Blake Snell in that deal with the Washington Nationals, allow them to stay underneath that luxury tax threshold. Yeah, it's going to happen. I think probably tomorrow. There's a lot of news that's come out in the last week. We started this at about 8:30. Probably about 6:30 is when all the news started trickling in about Juan Soto, the asking price. Once you get to the exchanging names part, that's when you know a real deal is getting close, especially when those names are getting leaked repeatedly. I think it's getting closer and closer. There's a lot of talk that the Cardinals were interested in him and are considered a front runner for him along with the Padres. I don't buy it. Do I think that the trade for Juan Soto makes them contenders? If their rotation stays as good as it's been this year, absolutely. Do I think they're better than the Dodgers? Not quite. When you look at the Dodgers 1, 2, 3 in their lineup, Mookie Betts from the Boston Red Sox, Trey Turner from the Washington Nationals, Freddie Freeman from the Atlanta Braves. They got the three best players off of other teams. Now look at the San Diego Padres. That lineup of Soto, Tatis Jr., and Machado is very good, but it's not quite as good as that Dodgers three. The rest of the lineup, though, both teams leave a lot to be desired because both teams are having a lot of poor performances at other positions. But this move would allow the Padres to be able to fill in those other spots with a better lineup in an everyday type of role. You get to platoon Nomar Mazara in right. Profar is probably going to play a little bit more as a utility infielder. You got Cronenworth still there. Hosmer's been terrible in the second half of the season so far. Maybe you make a move at first base since there's a few first basemen out there that shouldn't cost an arm and a leg. Catcher's been a void for you at least offensively. Jorge Alfaro, the former top prospect of the Rangers, traded in the Cole Hamels deal, and then was traded in the Real Muto deal, then was traded this offseason to the Padres, mainly because he was going to be non-tendered anyway by the Marlins. But he's been the lone offensive source for the Padres at the catcher position. Maybe a move for Wilson Contreras. I think if they get Soto, they're going to have to round out that lineup just a teensy bit more, and that could make them real contenders out in the West. Do I think they'll win the division over the Dodgers? No. But do I think they could compete for the Dodgers in a 7-game series for the NL crown? Yes. They do need to get a little bit more bullpen help. Not much. I really like their rotation. And because of all their rotation pieces, they can move one of those guys as a long reliever in the bullpen when the postseason comes around. They're going to be set up very well. Dodgers, they're going to need pitching. The Dodgers are. Surprising to say after all the moves they've made over the past couple of years with their starting pitching. They've had so much extra starting pitching. They've had to trade some of it away. Think Kenta Maeda, that kind of thing. Max Scherzer goes in the offseason to the New York Mets. The NL playoffs are going to be fantastic. The Mets, the Braves, the Dodgers, and the Padres are the 4 best teams out in the West, or out in the NL anyway, and should be fantastic. The American League is a little bit more of a crapshoot anyway. The Yankees were the best team in the league to start the year. I didn't buy it even before then. I thought their starting pitching was going to need work, and it does. They're about middle of the pack starting rotation since the start of June anyway, with a 4.5 earned run average, I believe. They've improved that lineup with Andrew Benintendi, but I think they're going to have to add at least one starter. Red Sox are going to be sellers at this deadline. We already talked a little bit about Vazquez and Martinez anyway. The one name I was talking about with David earlier today anyway, in addition to Nelson Cruz possibly being a DH option for them, is a guy like Xander Bogaerts of the Red Sox. Now, the Red Sox already have assured Xander Bogaerts they're not moving him, but if they get a good offer from the Philadelphia Phillies as a rental option, I think the Red Sox, having already invested in Trevor Story, see that as an opportunity to get some value out of Bogaerts. They were not close in contract negotiations this offseason. In fact, Bogaerts said they were so far apart he didn't even want to talk contract anymore with the Red Sox, and they haven't since Bogaerts said that. And it sounded like they were at least $70 million apart per year. He's been about his career averages this year. He's a good 30 home run guy. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, but as I was saying, Xander Bogaerts might be the surprise of this deadline season anyway. Really excited to see if they actually do move him. If they do, be on the watch for what else the Red Sox could do. They got a couple of back-end starters they could move, Rich Hill, Michael Wacha, players like that. There's a couple names out there to keep in mind due to salary dump and that kind of a thing. Madison Bumgarner, they're going to have to eat that salary for the majority of it anyway. He's got a $14 million salary in 2025. He's been a league average pitcher this year and has been atrocious the previous 2 years. The Padres have 2 contracts that they could look to move. The Will Myers deal and the Eric Hosmer deal. Of course, Will Myers could be bought out could have his option decline next year anyway. Save him $19 million. So there's really only $23 million guaranteed on that deal, including this year and the $1 million buyout. Patrick Corbin of the Nationals was originally expected to be traded or to be in the Juan Soto deal. When the first reports of Juan Soto were coming out anyway, they said that they wanted to offload the deal offload the contract of Patrick Corbin. The management for the Nationals said, no, we're more than happy to hold on to him. We don't want to dilute the return of Juan Soto. So it sounds like Patrick Corbin's at least going to finish this year with the Nationals, but maybe a team out there says, hey, we could use a back-end starter who could eat a few innings, even if he's absolutely terrible, if you're willing to eat a lot of that salary. Possible. Some players we haven't really talked about too much anyway. Brian Reynolds of the Pirates. I don't expect him to be moved, but he's a name that's come up over the past couple of years as a trade target. A good center field, not prospect, but a good center fielder. He doesn't answer all the questions for a lot of teams out there, but he would be a good contact hitter for a number of teams. We already talked a little bit about Shane Bieber. A lot of bullpens out there among a bunch of different teams that are willing to give away some options or some pieces out there. Garrett Richards of the Rangers could be a nice piece that's out there. Long reliever. He's had a little bit more success this year. Came over from the Red Sox along with Martine Perez. Both have pitched phenomenal. Cubs fans constantly tell me Patrick Wisdom should get us a nice price in trade. No, he's not. Don't even get it twisted. The Giants also have a couple other outfielders they could trade. A veteran at first base in Brandon Belt. Maybe a trade of Brandon Belt to the Padres for Eric Hosmer. Maybe a prospect to be able to eat the contract of Hosmer. Might make sense. Giants have a lot of money that are freeing up over the next couple of years. They're said to be interested in going after Aaron Judge this offseason. I'll believe it when I see it if they're ever able to convince him. Diamondbacks have a couple other relievers as well in addition to Mantiply that they could move. Ian Kennedy, Mark Melancon, Jordan Luplow. And then the Rockies have Alex Colome, and C.J. Cron, the first baseman as well. That's why I don't expect these first basemen to really command any real value in trade because there's so many of them that are so similar. Oh, yeah, I don't think the Padres even make the trade if they don't already have a salary parameters pretty much in mind, or if they haven't already talked to Juan Soto about what it would take for a contract. The reports out there originally were that he wanted a $50 million plus deal. He was looking at the Max Scherzer contract of $43 million average annual value. Looking at something like that, the Nationals offered him $440 million over 15 years, which was about $29 million in average annual value. That's garbage in about 10 years. That's not going to be equitable value for a player of Juan Soto's caliber. He's only 23 years old. He's going to be a free agent after his age 25 season. He's going to get $500 million. It's going to happen. Now, what's that average annual value going to come in at? You're probably going to be looking something around $38 to $42 million is what Juan Soto's going to get. Maybe he wants to beat Max Scherzer's deal and get $43.5 million. That could make some sense, too, for the Padres. They've been willing to shell out money over the last couple of years. Everybody said they're crazy for signing Eric Hosmer for that contract. The first couple of years of that deal didn't look bad. Now, of course, it does. As far as the Manny Machado sweepstakes, they were willing to go that length of term anyway with him. They've been willing to extend their those long-term deals longer than what other teams would. So maybe something like that gets worked out fairly quickly, though, if they make the trade. But if I had to guess, you're probably looking $500 million over 12 to 13 years, something like that. Ups the total value of the deal, ups the average annual value, decreases the term of the deal as well. A little bit more news. Matt Moore is unavailable tonight after pitching the last two nights. I don't think they would have pitched him anyway, just because I think that they're going to basically set Matt Moore aside now for at least the next couple of days until the trade deadline passes. See if they can get a good price for him. As I mentioned, congratulations to Will Clark. Those of you who've been a baseball fan for, I don't know, probably 20, 25 years might remember the name Will Clark. A longtime San Francisco Giant, played for the Rangers for about 5 years as well. Baltimore Orioles, I think, towards the tail end of his career. Great all-around first baseman. He's going to be entering the San Francisco Giants Hall of Fame today. Great player, hit for a lot of average. All-around good player. Congratulations, Will Clark. Watching the Rangers game while we wait for some more trade news to break anyway. Appreciate you guys joining us. If you haven't hit that subscribe button already, please do so. We'll probably keep going with this live anyway until probably about 11 o'clock tonight, just in case a trade does break here in the next 20 minutes or so. Once all the games are complete tonight, we might see a trade after the games are completed if they didn't want to pull him off the field in the middle of a game. So follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN. That way you don't miss out on any news if it breaks tonight. Juan Soto news, if it breaks, we will immediately make a video and probably go live as well. Don't care if it's 1 o'clock in the morning. That's probably the biggest trade in the history of baseball, if that happens. Think back to the deal that the Rangers made for Cole Hamels when he had 4 years left on his deal. They sent like 4 of their top 10 prospects in that deal to get Cole Hamels. They also got a good reliever out of it in Jake Diekman. I expect that deal was probably one of the most lopsided deals as far as talent at the time. You think back to the Mark Teixeira deal with the Rangers and the Atlanta Braves. That deal is probably lauded as the most lopsided deal in trade history. Looking back on it now, it's a little bit more even. Where do you think Ohtani is going to go? Okay, let's assume Soto is traded before end of day Sunday. If Ohtani is going to be moved, that has to happen. Once that does, the Dodgers, I think, step up their pursuit of Ohtani. They start to really talk about it with the Dodgers, or excuse me, with the Angels anyway. I think that could have some real momentum. The Yankees, if they miss out on Frankie Montos, say that the Cardinals or Twins step up their bid on him, the Yankees probably circle to Ohtani and say, hey, we need a frontline starting pitcher, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then you could really see a bidding war get going by end of day Monday and then gets moved by Tuesday. But if I had to pick a team where he goes to, Dodgers. I think the Yankees have the pieces to get it done, but I think they're just, I don't know. I just don't see the Yankees having the fortitude, the stones to be able to get something like that done. Yes, Yankee fans, I'm saying your front office doesn't have the stones to make a move. They've kind of hamstrung themselves with the Donaldson deal now, at least for the next couple of years. They've got to worry about the Aaron Judge deal. Ohtani's going to command a very similar salary to Aaron Judge. They have to worry about that shortstop position now as well. Is Volpe really going to be the guy for them? They have the Benintendi now on an expiring deal. They've got Hicks long-term as well in the outfield. They've got to worry about that designated hitter spot. Giancarlo Stanton is there. Joey Gallo is going to be DFA'd. There's just a lot of moving parts for the Yankees. So if I had to pick a team, it's going to be the Dodgers. Cartaya probably is going to go in that deal. A couple of other top prospects as well. Maybe you see a guy like Gavin Lux go the other way in that type of a deal. Major league ready talent. They're already thin on starting pitching, so I don't know. Gallo does need to go back to the Rangers. That left field spot is perfect for him right now, as bad as the left fielders have been for the Rangers. It's not been close. Getting back to somewhere comfortable for him, give him a pillow contract for next year, maybe a 1 year $5, maybe a 1 year $7 million deal. They have Cole Calhoun for that already. So if they do make the addition of Gallo, I think Cole Calhoun's going to have to be moved at the deadline. He's been a nice piece for the Rangers. He'd be a good deadline ad for a team that needs a contact hitter, corner outfield type. Bottom of the 8th in the Rangers and Angels game, 7-4. Runner on first, 3-2 count. Santana pitches to Marsh, and it's fouled off again. If you guys are watching baseball games here late, seen a lot of good things out of the Yankees recently out of their lineup. Worry still about that rotation, though. Seattle made the big trade last night for Luis Castillo, giving away their 1, 3, and 5 prospects in their system. A great haul for the Cincinnati Reds. Really is going to jumpstart their rebuild after they didn't get much in that Jesse Winker deal, as they were trying to offload salary more than anything else. Darn paywalls. Saw an article pop up on Martine Perez. Apparently the Rangers beat reporter asked Martine Perez about what a trade, if that would impact him coming back to the Rangers in the offseason. Of course it would. Do I think Mike Trout is ever traded? No. Do I think he should be? Yeah, I think they should have traded him years ago at this point. It was a mistake to give him that long of an extension. Mike Trout is probably the most loyal guy in all of baseball, though, and he's never going to ask for a trade. I don't care if they lose every single game from now until the day he retires. Mike Trout will never ask for a trade. Ever. Why give up that level of talent when you don't have to if you're the Angels? Sells tickets in a competitive LA market. Come out and see one of the top 3 players in all of baseball, even though we're going to lose every single night because we can't build a team around him no matter what we try to do. We invest in pitching, it fails. We invest in a third baseman, it fails. We invest in an outfielder again and again and again and again, and it fails again and again and again and again. But no, Mike Trout will never be traded. I'm curious to see when we're finally going to see another starting pitcher moved after the market kind of said, whoa, what's going on with the Luis Castillo move? Frankie Montos, I think, is probably the next starting pitcher to go, but I want to see him move soon. I'm tired of seeing this halted period right now. If he moves tonight, the market should be very active tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday for trades. If he doesn't move tonight, that's going to bottle everything up. The Juan Soto deal is kind of bottling things up from a hitting market perspective. The only hitters we've seen move: Benintendi, Naquin, Vogelbach, and Carlos Santana. Outside of that, we really haven't seen any other moves. David Peralta was moved. Sounds like the Cardinals might be interested in Jake Odorizzi. What are the Houston Astros doing with their rotation? I found it odd that they were actually talking about trading away some starting pitching with Jose Urquidy and now Jake Odorizzi now getting some headlines. A little bit surprising. I want to look at the depth chart anyway for the Astros just to see what their starting rotation looks like right now. It's one too many articles now on the Astros starting pitchers. Lance McCullers is coming back. Sorry about that, guys. Try to catch those the second I see them pop up there. Okay, let's look at their rotation options. Justin Verlander, Valdez, Urquidy, that's kind of your starters right now. Odorizzi as well. They got McCullers coming back. Maybe they see themselves as an embarrassment of riches among that starting staff. Possible, but you can never have too much starting pitching. Got to wonder if they're making a mistake by thinking about splitting up that starting pitching. Luis Garcia's been very good for them as well. They do have a lot of good bullpen options out there. Ryan Stanek's been fantastic for the Astros this year. Phil Maton has had his issues as of late, so they could add a bullpen piece, of course. But it sounds like they want to address their starting lineup a little bit more at the moment, mainly because of underperformance by Yuli Gurriel at first. Who would have thought they had been after a first baseman at the deadline and not a shortstop, especially after losing Carlos Correa? Center field priority one. Well, ever since they lost George Springer, they haven't really had a great center fielder out there. They've kind of had a hole out there. Maybe they're a fit for Ramon Loriano. They were mentioned before the season as an option for Ramon Loriano, and then of course the suspension, et cetera, that he was going to have to deal with. They weren't really interested with dealing with that at the beginning of the season, but now he's of course has that behind him now. So maybe you see Ramon Loriano go to the Astros. Of course, it would be within the division, so trade might be a little bit more cumbersome to get done, but that would make some sense. Welcome, Big Mike. Appreciate it. Yeah, we got a mod right now anyway. If we get more people in the live anyway, we might have some more. As we get towards the end of the night in these games anyway, we notice our views start to pick up anyway, so we appreciate you guys joining us. No, not a lot of you can watch your favorite team out of market games, those kinds of things. So doing a lot of trade deadline talk, so we should have a few more people tonight than usual. Bases loaded in the Rangers game, and they just had a wild pitch to tie the game at 7-7. You an Astros fan, David? Do you believe the smoke around their starting pitchers that they're going to end up moving one to try to make these in order to make these deals work? Bringing in a Josh Bell, maybe a Loriano, maybe a bullpen piece, something like that? Or do you think that's just talk that they're willing to buy and sell at the deadline? Welcome in, Howie. If you haven't hit that subscribe button already, please do so. Yeah, I didn't see the results of how he did in his rehab outing with McCullers anyway. Soto and Bell to the Padres. There's a base hit in the Rangers game, and that's going to be now 9-7. Rangers bullpen has been terrible in close games. You just want Soto and Bell to go to the Padres, Mark? Or are you seeing that somewhere? Because I haven't seen anything yet. Padres could use a first baseman. Bell is probably the best one on the market. But you got to think that the Nationals are going to try to split up their two best assets to trade. You like Valdez the best out of those starting pitchers? So you're saying maybe they trade Urquidy or Odorizzi? I think Odorizzi is probably the easiest to trade out of that group because he wasn't brought up by that group. Garcia. I haven't paid too much attention to the Astro starters. Garcia, is this his first year or second year as a starter for them? trying to remember. Let me pull up his numbers. Second, this year, a 3.81 ERA and 99 innings, 107 strikeouts. He's very good. Christian Javier, 88 innings, 3.2. Appreciate the like. Thank you very much. There it goes. Garcia, 25-year-old right-hander, young. Should have a lot of control going forward. He would have massive value if he were on the market, though. That's why I don't think they'll ever move him right now. Team ERA under 3. And getting McCullers back. That's a very good pitcher there. Jeez, these people. Astros are the best in baseball with ERA. Yeah, they've been good for a number of years now. I really like the way they've been able to develop their pitching. Just look at their starting pitching. The only people they brought in from the outside, Verlander and Odorizzi, to kind of supplement. The rest are all homegrown guys. So the Astros have done very well keeping that core together while still developing starting pitching. Even with the change in the front office after the whole banging on the trash cans thing that they had to deal with, firing of their GM and their manager, bringing in Dusty Baker and the new GM from the Tampa Bay Rays, they've done very well. No news yet anyway tonight. Only the small trade of Chris Martin to the Dodgers, a bullpen piece there. David Peralta going to the Rays today. The Astros are good for baseball. I like them a lot more now that they're finally getting out of their too cool for school days, I'll put it that way. Everybody was anointing them champs, and sure, they were on that track if they had the talent really play up to it, and they did. They did it with their own sort of swagger. Now they're still a very good team, just have lost a little bit of that swagger. Makes me respect them a little bit more. Nice base hit for Simeon, a little dribbler. Gets on board for the Rangers to start the ninth, 1 away. We'll go ahead and stick through into the Rangers game anyway. It's after 11 o'clock now in the Central Time Zone. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Feel free to join us tomorrow. We'll be pulling a full, long live stream for you guys tomorrow from about 10 a.m. to about 10:30 a.m. to about 10:30 p.m. tomorrow night. Might take a break in the middle of there, but we'll try to do it end to end for you guys. Jonah Heim up for the Rangers against Iglesias. Iglesias is another arm that you could see moved at the deadline. Aren't a lot of good closers on the market. The only decent closer this year is David Robertson. He hasn't really been tested at all. Thank you for the like. Appreciate it. But Iglesias has been tested in the past, not so much this year, as the Angels have not been very good. Thank you guys for joining us again tonight. Feel free to join us tomorrow. Subscribe to us here on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN. Good night, David. Have a good one. Appreciate the like and the follow. We'll see you guys tomorrow with the trade deadline. Two one now to Jonah Heim. Top of the ninth, Rangers losing 9-7 after the bullpen gave it away yet again. This one off the plate inside, and it's 3-1. Heim represents the tying run. If he gets on, the go-ahead run will come to the plate. The pitch, outside ball 4. Things getting interesting. As Iglesias walks Jonah Heim. It'll be Nathaniel Lowe, who's 1 for 4 today. Did have that home run off of Shohei Ohtani on Thursday. If he can do that here, Rangers take the lead. Rangers have been terrible in one-run games this year. They're like 5-23 or something like that. Heim has been taken out. Leody Taveras is now the pinch runner at first base. He represents the tying run. Makes sense there to try at least avoid the double play or possibly score on a base hit into the gap. Nathaniel Lowe in the 7th inning or later in a close game and 53 plate appearances, hitting .320 on the year. Swing and a miss, 1-1. That one misses below the zone, and it's 2-1. Iglesias on the year has 3 blown saves out of 18 opportunities. This one lashed down the third base line foul, 2-2. Does have a 4.19 ERA, so he's not necessarily having the greatest year of his career. David Robertson has performed a lot better. So maybe the Angels hold on to him, see if they can flip him next year. Little tapper there, foul, and it remains 2-2. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Make sure you join us tomorrow for our trade deadline talking weight, pretty much starting around 10:30. We'll cover some live baseball games. Starting around 11 o'clock is the first game of the day, but we'll go over some of the trade deadline stuff before we start. We might have some overnight trades as well. Juan Soto trade seems like it's getting a little bit closer. Teams exchanging names and ideas, that kind of thing. The Nationals price keeps going up, but I kind of expected that. That one misses low, and it's 3-2. Adolis Garcia is on deck anyway. The 3-2 pitch. Pounded into the turf. This will be at least a productive out for Nathaniel Lowe. Gets the runners to second and third now with 2 outs. A base hit probably ties the game for Garcia. The 9-7 game now here in the top of the ninth. That pitch misses well outside. Runners on second and third, 2 away here in the top of the ninth. Adolis Garcia up. He's also been clutch for the Rangers this year. In the 7th inning or later in close games and 55 plate appearances. Has an average over 400. He has struggled a lot lately. He's been striking out a bunch. We'll see how he does here. Takes that 95-mile-an-hour fastball right at the top of the zone. And it's now 1-1. You don't need to put it in the seats, though, if you're Garcia. You just need to make contact, drive it into the outfield somewhere, find some grass. Angels 2 strikes away from winning the first game of this series. Their first game of the series, I should say. That one misses just off the plate. Iglesias rolls his eyes and his head, shakes his head in disgust at the home plate umpire. He wanted that pitch. It did not miss by much. I'll give him that. Two-one now to Garcia. After this game wraps up anyway, we'll kind of go through all the trade chatter today one last time. Stick around for a few minutes anyway, just in case a trade happens after all the MLB games are finally complete for the day. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. Garcia swings and misses at that one. He has had an issue with overswinging or swinging too hard at the ball anyway. The 2-2 pitch in the other batter's box, and that one gets away just a little bit, but not far enough to chase home a run. It's now 3-2. Angels fans all on their feet now. Looks like we finally might get the 3-2 pitch here. Iglesias takes a deep breath. The pitch popped up, and that'll get out of play, and we'll do it again. 9-7 the score. Runners on second and third, though. Rangers trying to claw their way back in this one after their bullpen coughed up the lead in the bottom of the 8th. Garcia's faced 5 sliders in this at-bat, only 1 fastball. And the pitch popped into the air, out into center, going back, drifting back at the wall, and makes the catch. The ball game is over. The Angels take it 9-7. That was a little bit more work than the Angels were hoping it would be, but they're able to hold on and take the third game of this set anyway, their first of the 4-game series. Finale of the series tomorrow. Rangers look to take the series. Angels look to at least leave it tied. Garcia looked like he got under it just a little bit, gave it a good ride. Any other part of the ballpark probably gets out, except for maybe deeper in center field. But the Rangers lose 9-7. All righty. Now that the game is over anyway, just to kind of recap you guys on all the trade chatter from the day. We saw Luis Castillo get traded yesterday from the Cincinnati Reds to the Seattle Mariners. Check out our YouTube page, subscribe to us. Check out the live that we did last night about the Luis Castillo trade. We did a video this morning, a short video. If you want to kind of get everything within 1 minute, everything you need to know about that trade is in that video. Check it out on YouTube. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN. That way you don't miss out on any of the shorts or lives that we put out for you guys. But the next chip that looks like it's going to fall is either Juan Soto or Frankie Montos right now. Frankie Montos is kind of holding up the pitching side of the equation. The Yankees and Cardinals are said to be the most active after him. As far as Juan Soto, there were believed to be 4 teams in the mix for him, but it now seems like a one-horse race. At least that's what all the headlines are coming out right now, is that there's a lot of negotiations happening between the Padres and Nationals. The Padres have a lot of their top prospects that they are willing to move in a deal for Juan Soto. That's why it seems like this thing will get done at some point before the deadline. Jeff Passan appeared on the Dan Patrick show earlier today or yesterday. I can't remember which day anyway. But he said that the trade chances for Juan Soto he didn't believe were very high at the beginning. He now places those chances about 80%. So kind of keep that in mind when you look at Juan Soto. The news tonight on the Juan Soto front is that they're actually exchanging names. They're not just saying, hey, we want 3 or 4 prospects just to kind of get an idea of what it would cost. No, they're talking actual turkey. They're saying that C.J. Abrams is going to be the headliner going back to the Washington Nationals, a la the acquisition of Trey Turner years ago in the Will Myers trade. Nationals trying to get their shortstop of the future. Robert Hassel as well, one of the best hitting outfielders in all of minor league baseball. You're looking at Adrian Morejon, starting pitching option there. You're looking at players like Wood and Merrill also being included in that deal. We'll see if they end up getting something like that done. But as it stands right now, the talks between the San Diego Padres and the Washington Nationals are intensifying, according to John Paul Morosi, John Heyman, Joel Sherman, and a number of other reporters right now. Now, it doesn't mean that it's close, but I expect it to possibly get done tomorrow. It doesn't look like it's going to break tonight, but if it does, be assured we will come back live for you guys. We'll put out a short video as well. You guys are more than welcome to join us in the chat and tell us what you think of the trade. Will the Padres give up too much? Are they giving up too little? Are the Nationals getting enough for Juan Soto? But he's not the only name on the market. However, he is holding up every single hitter on the market right now. We've only seen a couple of bats move at the deadlines or before the deadline so far, and none of them are impact bats. Daniel Vogelbach, Tyler Naquin, Carlos Santana, and Andrew Benintendi. Benintendi, the only one of real consequence going to the Yankees for 3 minor league arms that are on really good years in a regressing Yankees farm system. So the Royals going with quantity over quality for right now. But that quality, of course, is there this year that they got in that deal. So we'll see if the Yankees are bit by that in the long term, much like they did right now. Angels want Dustin May from the Dodgers. Yeah, that would be an absolute must if you're a Angels fan. He would probably be the starting pitching piece that would have to come back on the deal. Maybe you do a Dustin May, Gavin Lux, Diego Cartaya, and a couple of other prospects for Shohei Ohtani. That would make a lot of sense to get a Shohei Ohtani deal done. He's the other piece that's holding up a lot of this talk. A lot of teams out there don't believe that Shohei Ohtani is going to be moved before the deadline. But as we've already talked about a lot in this live, make sure you go back in the beginning of this video and check out a lot of that content. Shohei Ohtani's price is said to be 4, not of your best prospects, 4 of the best prospects in your system, and additional major league talent as well. A deal that would include Dustin May, Gavin Lux, your top prospect in Cartaya, and a couple others might be enough major league talent in that deal for the Angels to say, yes, we can do that type of a deal. The other player that I mentioned that's holding up things right now is the Frankie Montos talks. After Luis Castillo kind of reset the starting pitching market, everybody needed to kind of calm down, get their bearings again, and now Frankie Montos is probably going to have to be moved either tonight in the overnight or tomorrow afternoon. Hopefully it's earlier rather than later, just because I'm tired of seeing this glut of starting pitching that could be moved here at the deadline. Originally, I didn't think there was going to be a lot, but it seems like a lot of teams are now making the decision to sell here at the deadline. Most notably, the San Francisco Giants have Carlos Rodon now on the market, in addition to Jock Peterson, another hitter that's being held up by the Juan Soto sweepstakes. If some of those teams that are in the Juan Soto, excuse me, in the Juan Soto sweepstakes want to pivot to a guy on an expiring deal, Jock Peterson could be their guy. He is on the injured list. However, you saw how he performed in the postseason last year. This is not expected to be a long-term injury for him. He should be back around mid-August. Now, if you're looking at the rest of the deadline, a number of other starting pitchers are out there. Thor from the LA Angels is out there. Turek Skubal of the Tigers, Martine Perez could be had if you give up enough to the Rangers for him. Tyler Mahle of the Reds, the second starter of the Reds to be traded at this deadline. I fully expect him to be moved. If I had to, pick a horse in the race right now, I'd say the Twins probably end up with him. However, I think they need to get a starting pitcher that's an ace quality starter. Mahle isn't that, but he does give them some more length. We saw how badly Joe Ryan pitched the other night against the Padres. They need another starter there. Quality, if it's an ace, great, but they need somebody. But I think they do need to get an ace at some point. They invested a lot in this team to be able to bring in a guy like Carlos Correa this offseason. They want to win. They want to show Carlos Correa they can win for the long term. And he's probably going to opt out this offseason. But if they can show Carlos Correa that they actually want to win games and actually are capable of winning games and not just being swept in the postseason by the Yankees every single time they make the postseason, maybe that convinces Carlos Correa to stay in the long term, not just as a one-hit wonder for them. Other players on the market, Pablo Lopez, anyway, of the Marlins as well as out there. The Blue Jays are expected to pursue starting pitching. The Red Sox have a lot of lower-end starting pitchers on the market right now, looking at Rich Hill, Michael Wacha, pieces like that. They are expected to try to move J.D. Martinez. Red Sox beat reporters are saying J.D. Martinez is expected to be traded now. They handicap it about 70, 80% right now, according to Chris Cotillo, one of the beat reporters for them. But having getting off of the money for J.D. Martinez would be very good for them. The New York Mets are expected to pursue him the most. If they get him, that takes them out of the Trey Mancini sweepstakes. But if they get him, maybe they get Christian Vazquez as well to solidify their catching spot as well. The Mets are willing to spend as much money as they need to try to win. Cohen has been more than willing to do that this year. We'll see if they continue to do so. The rest of the market, anyway, a lot of bullpen is going to be moved over the next couple of days. Most of that, though, is going to move on Tuesday. The best left-handed reliever out there is Matt Moore, the best closer, David Robertson. Those two probably move a little bit earlier than that. We'll see if they end up moving before that as well. Some of the all-stars that you saw, Joe Mantiply of the Arizona Diamondbacks, some trade deadline veterans of years past, Ian Kennedy, Mark Melancon could be moved of the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Nationals have a couple of guys, Kyle Finnegan, Carl Edwards Jr. There's a lot of other starters that could be moved that are fifth, sixth option type of guys. Jose Quintana of the Pirates comes to mind. Maybe the White Sox kick the tires on him as they're very familiar with his track record, and it seems like he's finally rebounded to his old form. So maybe he gives the White Sox a boost as they try to make that wild card run. The Mariners, though, made their splash, though, and got Luis Castillo yesterday, kind of depleting their farm system. They could still add some bullpen, back-end starter, maybe cash in some of their outfield chips that they have that have already graduated from the prospect ranks, move them around and reinvest that talent, and see if they can make a run at the postseason. I fully expect the Mariners to make the postseason now with the Luis Castillo trade. They'll probably lock up one of those wild card spots. I don't think they win the division over the Astros. The Astros still have the best pitching, in my opinion. Their best. They still could use some help in the lineup anyway. Yuli Gurriel hasn't performed very well, but I fully expect them to get a low-cost first baseman. They're said to be in on Josh Bell. That'd probably be the best option out there, but there's a number of other equitable options for them out there on the market. Garrett Cooper, Brandon Belt is expected to be available. A number of other starters at first base are available right now. But thank you guys for joining us tonight. Make sure you join us tomorrow. We'll start at about 10:30. If there's any breaking news any major breaking news tonight that comes out, we will let you guys know. Put out a short video, and then we'll try to go live, especially if it's the Juan Soto sweepstakes. It doesn't sound like the deal is going to happen tonight, though. There are a lot of headlines that indicate that something could happen over the next 24 hours. So make sure you subscribe to us here at Upside SN on Twitter. Make sure you follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to us here on YouTube anyway. at the Upside Sports Network anyway. Really appreciate all you guys joining us. All the support that we've gotten over the past month has been great. Trying to reach 400 here over the next few days. Let's see if we can really get there. But appreciate all you guys who have subscribed. Thank you guys to those of you who have joined us on Twitter at UpsideSN. And we'll see you guys tomorrow morning. Y'all have a great evening, all right?